First World Order Radio. Finally, we are on the air. No doubt. All right.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio.
We get on into some of that order consciousness tonight.
First World Order Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m.
We got to talk about what is taking place on the planet.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio. First, we need to let you know we're going to be doing more shows, giving out more information on Wednesdays. Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we are now going to make this the hottest day of the week.
Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. An indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the group based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it. Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. An indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the group based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it.
You need to understand how magical this, something like this every Wednesday can become. So you need to start getting your calendar right, get your schedule right. You need to know our intention straight out.
All right, so these clues are given throughout the various languages was to piece the puzzle of this ancient mystery school back together again.
And what we plan on doing, both of us, is bringing y'all some surefire dynamite. We're going to take this level up a notch. We're going to have stuff to do here. This is not just going to be about philosophies and theories, shit that works.
You have an activated pineal gland in which that produced this black chemical called melanin.
What we did was gave a hard line in the sand between the different definitions of esoteric study and exoteric study. Playtime is over.
Once again, you back with First Water Radio. Your host, Dr. Alim BEY, as well as also my co-host coming on, Brother Fahim Al. Are you here, brother?
I tell you, Washington East, Brother Alim.
Yeah, I tell you, Washington East, Jacques. How you doing tonight?
Well, brother, very well. How you doing tonight, God?
That's good.
All right, outstanding.
Glad to hear that. We going in for session 3 of Flip the Script, Brother Panic and myself. Getting ready to bring Brother Panic on. Lord, are you here?
Yeah, what's going on, Almighty? What's happening?
Happening, brother?
Hey, how are you?
Peace. What's going on, Brother Al?
Very well, brother, very well.
Good to hear. As Alim said, we on part 3 of Flip the Script, which is more of a funny name because really Alim is a lecturer, so this is what he's actually used to. What's really flipping the script is him as a radio host. You know, that's really flipping the script. He's actually the dude that's usually answering the questions. But, you know, since he had a radio show, and what I was looking to do was to share some of the information, because I became a Facebook or Internet lecturer entity. So that being the case, and Alim is from the actual lecture circuit before this Internet came up. So as he's also an Internet entity, his roots go back a little bit deeper in the lecture circuit. So moving forward, what we decided to do was come together, as you know, for First World Order Radio and deal with, being able to flip the script in this context, which is a very satisfying thing, more than it just going one way. You know what I mean? So, there's times where Alim could come on and he's more than capable of handling the subject, and and you guys get more than your money's worth, and you're paying absolutely fucking nothing. So, is all delicious for you. So, in that context, this is the first time we did actually turn the tables, which I think is something we should do more often. Today, part 3, as Alim pointed out, we're going to get into a couple of questions about the Moors. And the first show, if you missed, we did based upon Alim's lecture that he did in Atlanta on basic Kemetic science and Kemetic symbolism and certain symbolisms in the body, which led us into the second portion of the Q&A, which led us into some of the Bible mysteries. So all of those standard stories about the Bible, we got into some of those Q&As, and what Alim did was raise some of these mundane, or what you thought to be mundane, stories into their true metaphysical definitions, which is a very valuable thing for anyone, because most of us get stuck because the first training in any form of anything that's outside of yourself is usually done with Christianity or something close to it. So when we do become conscious, and what I've noticed with conscious people, we spend a great deal of our lives, our time, our energy trying to shut down the mind control that was given to us by our parents and grandparents. So when it's very valuable when someone can come along and speak directly to some of those mysteries, because it puts you in a greater place. It allows you to put to rest some of the shit that torments you and allow you to move on in your study. So if you haven't heard some of the things we did in this show, then you're truly missing out, and you're gypping yourself of some real conscious education, some real mystical shit that is not easy to come by. And you need to trust me when I say that. It is not easy to come by. So we touched on a lot of it as much as we could do in our 3-hour periods. But like I said, if you need to go deeper, you may need to get with Alim at dralimlbey.com. So today, what we're going to touch on, I have a few questions on some of this Moorish information. And why I'm excited about asking Alim, because I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. He is the most metaphysical Moor I've ever met on the planet. And if I'm missing out on a great deal of Moorish metaphysics, occult science, I'm sure he's going to clue me in today within this questioning. But up until this point, I would have to say Alim is the only guy I met that deals with Moorish information, and I've seen him bridge it to more advanced information. So that's what we're going to try to do here today, because what I noticed myself, like a lot of other people, still have a lot of questions about Moorish information, the historic Moors versus the Moors of today, and how some of this information that the Moors teach could be applied in their life. So we're going to try to get into some of that and some of these metaphysical things. So now the first question I want to ask Brother Alim is to put in context, because we always hear about this brother. So put in context, I guess, how his impact and why is he so important today. Will you tell us who is Noble Drew Ali?
All right. Well, Noble Drew Ali, I guess you can say, as he states himself, he was a prophet, a universal prophet at that. Anyone who reads the nationality cards will see that he never stopped at just one belief system. I mean, he also was an Egyptian adept. As well as also the card, he states that we honor all the prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius. When you read the Holy Quran 7, you see that he showed you the 18 missing years of Jesus going into India, going into, different other parts of the world. Of course, we know that this is all allegorical. However,
it is showing you the diversity, which that he came in order to, to give to the people. In other words, it just was, just one belief system such as Islam. You say that you're an Egyptian adept, that's not Islamic. When you say that you're a universal prophet, that's not just Islamic. When you say that you honor, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius are not spoken of per se in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, or nor are they spoken of within the Holy Quran of the Arabs. So, so therefore, he came in order to broaden our horizon as far as putting this information back together. And so, from his research and studies of the Moorish lineage and heritage, he took this, generic term, which dealt with ethnicity, and started to apply it on what we call nationality, showing how the word Moor, when you look up in Webster Dictionary, will be that of a noun as compared to Negro, Black, and Colored, being adjectives, so when it simply describes the things, while a noun is a person, place, or thing, so it's not just a description. So that's what he came to bring as far as us understanding grammar, and etymology, linguistics, in that regard. He was from the family of, he grew up on the Cherokee Reservation here in North Carolina, 1886. He was born. He had ties to indigenous bloodline right here in the Americas through the Washita. Anyone who's going to do the research on my page, dralimlbay.com, and go to the United Washita History page. I show the information coming out, the Empress book, The Return of the Ancient Ones, where Prophet Noble Drew Ali was part of the family bloodline of the Washita Turner family. He was, his mother was Eliza Turner, who was part of the landmark case known as the heirs of Henry Turner versus the United States, in which that the heirs of Henry Turner actually won the case, in which they recovered 68,883 acres of land, which is the mid to northern portion of Louisiana, as well as they was going for an estimate of almost like 30 million more acres of land, in which they actually would have covered more than 13 states, actually to 16 states in total, all the way up into almost the whole of Canada. And it shows how that land actually belonged to the indigenous people, and that the United States never purchased that land. Thomas Jefferson knew the fraud in which that took place. He stated himself that he was saddened by the circumstances and the situation, because there was supposed to be $15 million in gold, in which that supposed to have reached Napoleon, and actually only 11 million of it or so reached him. The other nearly 4 million actually sunk beneath the ocean, off the coast of Florida, in Cuba. So that means service. That means the money was never rendered. Thus, service was never rendered. Therefore, the land still is ours to this very day, even based on that scenario. So that is where us coming into understanding the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, where President Obama signed on to December the 16th, 2010, in which that states specifically that we as indigenous people have the right to nationality, we as indigenous people have the right to self-determination, self-autonomy, self-government, as well as also the putting together of our own judicial system. So these are just things in which that understanding that, yes, we're Africans, but we've been here in the Americas. We are the first people of the Americas. So, yes, we are type of Africa, but we are also the first people of the Americas. And this is in J. Rogers' book, Sex and Race. This is in Missing Pages of History by Indo-Kemet Kush, as well as his other book, What They Never Told You in History Class, as well as also Dr. Suzard's book, Black Out the Whitewash. So, as well as my book, First World Order, So whenever you go and start studying these books, also when I think it was When the Rocks Cry Out, is in that book. So there's many books in which that is now coming forth and bearing witness to us being the original people here in the Western Hemisphere. There's a book called Forbidden Archaeology in which that states specifically that we've been here at least 600 million years in the Western Hemisphere, documented.
We're gonna get as the show goes on deeper into though. I have questions about that as well. We're gonna get deeper into that area.
Right.
So I don't wanna go ahead, because I'm gonna walk you all the way. We're gonna walk all the way through that. I just want to stay for now on the founder, or what is
right. Well, he also was a Rosicrucian. He also was a Freemason, even though some tried to claim that he wasn't, but the evidence is there. His feet is at a 45-degree angle. His hand is at the fidelity sign over the heart, in which that verifies the Royal Arch degree. I think
exactly.
The 7th Royal Arch degree and the 2nd veil. So, and plus he's wearing the attire of the Shriners, of the so-called Black Shriners during that time period. Of course, the PHO, which is the Prince Hall, the PHA, which is Prince Hall affiliate, states they do not have him documented in their scrolls or rolls. I have brothers who have checked for Timothy Drew, and it's been verified that he is in the PHO, which is the Prince Hall origin. So that is what has been stated to me. And also, when you go to my website, you will read on the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Holy Temple Science of the World. On that particular page, you would see how Suleiman Muhammad was one of his teachers and one of the guys who started out with Prophet Noble Ali back in before 1913, but around that time when they formed the Canaanite Temple in New Jersey. So you would see the information he was on. He actually had a Masonic Shriner rite in which that went from the 1st degree to the 96th degree. Okay, in which that was very similar to the Memphis rite, in which that when you do your research, you would see how they have a very similar structure. And matter of fact, his was called the Medina rite, and he attempted to contact the brothers in the Prince Hall in order to tell them that they must come up under him, and because they was having so much problems with the European during that time period of saying that they were bogus, as we spoke about last night. Remember, Brother Fahim? So, he came in order to help squash that by showing the look. Suleiman Muhammad, he was actually a Egypto-Sudanese, very much like Deuce Muhammad Ali, who also was another teacher of Noble Drew Ali, as well as also of Marcus Garvey. So we see how these things came about. There was always masonry involved. Marcus Garvey was a Freemason under the Prince Hall. Martin Delaney was a Freemason under the Prince Hall. So we see that the leaders, have come. We also see how Elijah Muhammad was a Freemason. Minister Farrakhan is a Freemason. Malcolm, he went through and became a Freemason, as well as also Martin Luther King was a Freemason. So the Freemasons always sat at the helm of and leadership of any and all organizations. So regardless of what we want to see, this is just what took place over the last 100 years. So we want to, state that specifically is that, this is who Prophet Noble Drew Ali was, and he also said that he came to reveal the secrets, and that's what he was doing. And that possibly cost him his life for doing so. But now we have those secrets, or those, supposed secrets. And now we have to study, what he gave to us in order to connect it to the Kabbalah, connect it to the alchemical teachings, or the alchemy teachings, and different other facets of information.
See, now that's the exact angle I want to get at, because a lot of people just don't know who he is, and you actually just broke down the sciences he was dealing with. Because one of the things I see people stop at him at Islam. So you broke down that he was actually dealing with a host load of occult metaphysical information. But
he didn't. He was an Islamic. He didn't say he was an Islamic adept. That would have just took specifically to Sufism, which is mysticism of our Islam, which is good too. But he incorporated all of that into saying that he was an Egyptian adept, in which that once you start studying Egypt, you would see how the Sufis, the Rosicrucians, the Masons, how all of them branched off from that school and that ideology, and so therefore you would become a more rounded, balanced individual.
Right.
Individual. See, now this is an important thing to say and understand, which again, some of the things I've never heard anyone but you say of how important it is to be able to deal with more than just one narrow point of view about anything, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? Like, people try to pigeonhole me, even myself. Well, Panic, you're black magic and you deal with magic. I'm like, I wouldn't just, me doing that and yelling that becomes another religion within itself too, another form of being stuck. So I'm glad, because this is the first time I'm hearing. Actually, certain of it is obvious, but this is the first time I'm hearing directly how many different forms of or fields of learning Noble Drew Ali was in. Now, let me ask you this so we can get background, assuming people don't. Like, what year was this going on, and kind of what was the mood of black people, so people could understand how of a breakthrough this information was he brought at that time? Like, at what was Negroes? Was niggas was still trying to figure out what kind of Kool-Aid goes mixed with what kind of fish sandwich. You know what I mean? The best way to get the meat out of a neck bone when he's bringing this level of information. So we understand how important it was.
Meat out the neck bone.
Right.
How the best way to clean a neck bone was basically the most scientific. Right. The best way to get the stink out of chitlin was the best, was what we were dealing with. So what kind of was the mood? Who else was emerging at the time, and what was the impact of Noble Drew Ali when he made
based on the various teachings, we will find that the founder of the Nation of Islam, Nasrullah Muhammad, was friends with Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and they met based on the 5% teachings at least by 1910. So 3 years prior to the formation of the Canaanite Temple, up on the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. But the Washita up under the Empress, she even had them as children sitting on a porch together in Louisiana. So that means that they grew up together, and each one, branched off, did their own thing. But this would make sense because during the time of turmoil of Noble Drew Ali,
I'm sorry to cut you, but I have to pause on that. I never knew that. That alone to me is breakthrough information, which you don't hear often, and is why I wanted to go on this line of questioning. That comes up a lot of shit just alone for me. You get what I'm saying? It puts a lot of shit in context when you hear that Noble Drew Ali and Elijah Muhammad knew each other, even as adults, but as kids as well.
Well, that's Master Farah Muhammad. They knew each other as children.
Farah Muhammad. Oh, my bad. Even same.
But Elijah Muhammad was a member, but he knew Noble Drew Ali too. You could see Noble Drew Ali. You could see
Noble Drew Ali standing up front at the 1928 convention, and diagonally right behind Noble Drew Ali in the back was, Elijah Muhammad, who was known then as Robert Poole Bey. Then
I got to ask you this. I have to ask you this then, because this now comes to mind. It's clear if you read Elijah Muhammad, at the very least, he knew advanced occult information, Kabbalistic, triple stage blackness, and all of this. It's clear based upon what you're sharing with us, and it's even clear in the symbology and the pictures of Noble Drew Ali that they had advanced information. They were not dealing with religion. So knowing each other, if you know, what would be the source of where they was getting it from at that time? These black
that had to be Freemasonry, it had to be the Rosicrucians, because those groups in which that they was part of. We know that Elijah Muhammad was not just a Freemason, but also a Shriner. But this is why they say that he had a third-grade education, in which that showed that he went through the Blue House, which is Inter-Apprentice, Fellowman, and Master Mason. So we know that he reached those particular levels. As far as Noble Drew Ali, we can see that from the fact that the Holy Quran Circle 7 comes directly from the Infinite Wisdom Lessons of the Rosicrucians, known as Unto Thee I Grant. So a portion of that comes right from out the Rosicrucian teachings. So how could he have gotten those teachings unless he was what? A Rosicrucian. So this is what we know. So we're talking about how they took this advanced science coming from these particular schools, and they, hence, when you study Masonry or when you study the Rosicrucians, they speak heavily about the Kabbalah. So yes, Triple Stage Darkness is there. The word Asiatic is there.
Right. The black man from Asia.
These are the key words that they left for us, so that we would know that they went deeper than just Islam.
Okay,
Islam
so then now this brings another question.
Pull out Christianity so they can start looking at themselves.
Okay, now this brings another question to mind. How does Father Allah play into this? Because it's even him using a numerical system and connecting it to words is Kabbalistic. So he had to know something as well. Just calling yourself a god back then, you know what I'm saying? So the father of the nation of gods and earth, he has to, how does he play into the scenario if there's a connection that goes that far back with him?
Well, actually, the Nation of Gods and Earth, or the 5%, is the flag itself, in which that was designed by Shamgar back in 1966, shows you specifically the unification of the Nation of Islam and the Moral Science Temple, because it has those circles. And then it also has also has the moon, the sun, moon, and star. These two organizations came under the banner of the Nation of Gods and Earth, as we now refer to them, or the 5%. Back then, in which that during that time period, we had Clarence 13X, known as Father Allah. He was alive during that time period in which he commissioned Shamgar in order to design that flag. And these are the two organizations in which that he knew also branched out from each other, that the Nation of Islam branched out from the temple, Detroit Temple number 4 there, in which that became their first Allah Temple of Islam, up on the Nation of Islam as it, soon became known as there in Detroit. So he studied that information. So we know that he had to have studied based on him gathering those particular two schools of thought, the Moral Science Temple, as well as also the Nation of Gods and Earth, of the Nation of Islam, in which that formed the Nation of Gods and Earth here later on, as we refer to them as. So those were the schools. Now remember, Rosicrucian, Freemasonry, that's why when you study the Nation of Gods and Earth, you're going to find a chapter about Freemasonry, coming from out the student enrollment of the Nation of Islam, where they simply speak about Freemasonry, and Triple Stage Darkness and different, and different things like that. So the same information he understood is that God is within, that God body,
God is in the temple, which is man. So hence Allah and man, which is all part of those same two schools of thoughts coming together.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. More Masonic than Rosicrucian. Most black dudes, black men, my father included, become Masons, and the best thing they can get together is a boat ride. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So where is the breakdown fishing? Like, where is the breakdown? Because it's clear now, just becoming a Mason doesn't bring you into this level of knowledge.
No.
So what's the difference, or where's the breakdown between the Masonry that Elijah Muhammad and Noble Drew Ali was dealing with versus the average dude now that's playing dress up?
Right. Well, remember Lyndon B. Johnson back in the 1960s, around 1965. What he did was made the churches and fraternal organizations and all of that, have to come up under incorporation. In other words, transform a charitable, educational, civic, religious organization into a 501c3. So hence they had to abide by the tenets of a 501c3 status, in which that basically that they were not allowed to become political.
Right.
So that means they couldn't, really resurrect the minds of the people to the state in which that they were prior to in the 1950s, 40s, and 30s, and so forth and so on. That was their way of shutting down the movement.
Okay. So basically, by him making that move, he turned it into a social church gathering as opposed to a system of transformation.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes so much sense. Okay, I just want to still get to, I don't know, we really covered the climate of the minds of black people around, well, first, the organization. What was the first organization that Noble Drew Ali put together? What was the name of it, and why was it important, and what was its mission, basically?
Well, the first, actually, he had the Drew Missionary Baptist Church, actually. That was the first thing he did, but because it was dealing with Christianity, he didn't feel that it was going to be strong enough in order to pull the people out of that mind state. And he didn't want to keep them in that mind state. So as he began to start going through the various schools of, Freemasonry, or the various degrees of Freemasonry, when you get to the 32nd and 33rd degree, during that time period, you had the right to become, what is known as a Shriner, in which that during that time, the greeting within the shrine is Assalamu Alaikum. And the reply is Wa Alaikum Assalam. So they actually was learning Islam. So he said, well, look, since higher degrees of Freemasonry is Islam, why don't I just use Islam? So then what happens is that he forms what is called the Old Canaanite Temple and set it up. The temples become just like the lodges, and they are given numbers, just like they're still giving numbers today, even in the Nation of Islam. You have Mosque number 1, Mosque number 2, Mosque number 3. So the temples became temple number 1, temple number 2. Like lodges number 1, lodges number 2, lodges. So this is what they did. They simply exchanged, temple and lodge and mosque. You know what I'm saying? And within the nation, within the Moore Science Temple, they used the word temple. So.
Okay, let me ask, what's
number 1 in Chicago, and different other ones. So that's actually what was going on.
What state did he start in first?
State of New Jersey.
New Jersey, okay. And then how far did it branch out?
It started in New Jersey, and then by the time in which that he passed on, which was 16 years later, from 1913 to 1929, July the 10th, 1929, when he held form. He had 15 major temples and then subordinate temples, in which that came up to around 21. So he had about 21 temples throughout various states.
in the East Coast and in the Midwest.
Okay, makes sense. Now you're putting this a lot of this in perspective for me, and I'm sure a lot of other folks. So you said this was in 1913?
Right, between 1913 and 1929. That 16-year period.
Just the fact that this was going on in 1913 is miraculous within
exactly.
It's miraculous. You know what I mean? It's miraculous.
Right. Think about him in 1913. Niggas just getting out of slavery, 1865. So just, damn 40 some odd, 50 years before, saying just one generation off, and he's telling them that Allah is in man.
Exactly. Or shit, it's amazing because niggas at that time was trying to live up to being called colored. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That was like an honor if you was called colored. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can go on for days because you can't tell black people today that God is in them. You know what I'm saying? Right. So imagine then. So that's why I wanted to put this in this context so we could really understand what a miraculous movement this was at that time, that this was truly a God on the planet that set up the lineage for a lot of us to rise, because it kind of gets lost in a lot of debates, in a lot of attitudes of what we're going to get into next, new Moors versus old Moors, and people who take a certain amount of information and create this identity, but there's no real understanding. You know what I'm saying? That's why we're getting with Alim, because he has an understanding of this. And me, myself, who's been around this for a long time, still hasn't gotten a true understanding. So I'm excited about these questions tonight, actually, in this particular lecture. All right, so now that we understand Noble Drew Ali's impact and kind of how strong it was, I notice people don't have a distinction between what they call old Moors of history versus the Moors of today. So could you kind of give us a distinction between the so-called Moors of history, what that was about, versus so-called new Moors of today?
Right. Well, the old Moors, they were mystics. They dealt with the mysticism of al-Islam. They did not deal with the traditions of Arabism. So they was very sure of what they were studying, such as alchemy, the Kabbalah. Matter of fact, if you read A.E. Wake's Holy Kabbalah, within the first 20 pages, he states that the Kabbalah was the remnants of information left in the libraries by from the Moors, in which that's out. You know what I'm saying? In which that now becomes what we call the Kabbalic or Kabbalistic teachings. But he states that it's the Moors. So we understand. The Moors were not just dealing, in just one belief system. I'm sorry. This is a hard thing for those who are trapped in the religious, religiosity, what I'm saying, of just, Islam from an Arab interpretation. But we never used Islam as an Arab interpretation. As a matter of fact, everyone has grown from the information. If you look at our writing system as far as our number system, that is Islamic. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. So our writing system.
Exactly.
I mean, our alphabet. The word alphabet is actually not just Greek; it's actually Hebrew. Aleph and Beth. Aleph means is first. And Beth is house. So Aleph Beth alphabet. You know what I'm saying? Which is Hebrew. So we dealt with Arabic. We dealt with Hebrew, and that was all based on a number system. Each letter was connected to a particular numeral or number. Hence, we developed geometry in Hebrew or numerology in Arabic. You know what I'm saying? So now, develop, these teachings to a whole deeper level. So now you can do, the various number systems and find out, how your name, matches up to the frequency in which that you came in on. Your soul urge, your life purpose, your mission. And all these things can be told just by looking at the numeral value associated with the letter in your name. So the Moors was doing all of this, back in the 14, 15, 1600s, and prior even too, So this is what the old Moors was dealing with. Now these new Moors who claim to be new Moors, they're more so linear in their thought.
Okay.
Dealing with more so the left hemisphere of the brain. They're not holistic. And many of them can't even see the connection between the various schools because they're so busy trying to separate themselves and stand out. That wasn't a problem for the old Moors because they knew they was already superior and they was bringing light, which produced the so-called Renaissance movement of Europe, how we are waking up out of the Dark Ages. You know what I'm saying? All of that was done by us, because, we've seen them, in their most bestial state, working on wars, eating their dead, being cannibals, as we would say, incest and sexing each other, regardless of any humanity whatsoever, all of these things were taking place for 2,000 years in the Caucasus Mountains, out of Russia and Turkey. I'm saying in the Caucasus area, you would actually see the mountain range and the actual mountain region and hillsides on which that they actually lived in for 2,000 years, and how we came in order to help civilize them, in order to bring them from out of that particular state, and then for them to fall back into certain states of it a little bit later on during the Dark Age, and then us having to come again in order to raise them out of that state. The ancient Egyptian speaks about the Tamahu man, or the pale one, in which that didn't have knowledge of self and was not conscious. This is why, like we said before, when you read Walter Scott's information, it states specifically in there that the Egyptians said the worst thing that we have ever done was create man in our image and after our likeness, referring to the Tamahu man. So, the ancients understood that, and the Moors said, look, we're dealing with soulless bodies. The only way to put a soul into a soulless body was by what? That was by mixing in. And this is what the Moors began to start to understand, and that's what they began to start doing, So, having the ability in order to develop a soul, having the ability in order to have a soul became the primary subject. And this is why they were studying alchemy, how to turn base lead to gold. Not just the illumination of your chakra systems, but also the illumination of a soul within the individual, because these individuals did not have this soul quality, this soul ability. So they was trying to find ways in order to give them this so that they can live in some type of humane way on this planet. It's still a work in progress as we see. But this is what the old Moors understood. The new Moors, they're just too busy debating each other on if Prophet Noble Drew Ali was a Mason or not. You know what I'm saying? They still dealing with petty issues. They're still dealing with if you need to use the UCC, or if you need to do your nationality, and if it's supposed to be free, or if someone can help you with it. They still debating over minor subjects like this. Social issues, and but when it comes to real law, very few are studying that. They're too busy trying to figure out history. What I'm saying, and where they fit in at. Like a third.
Okay, I don't want to go too far off because there's a couple of questions I want to bring up that you said about the old Moors. Now, what's interesting to me is that when you say how it's easy for me to accept when you say how the Moors of old, or the historical Moors, were dealing with a multitude of sciences, because anybody who is into studying even today, and I could put this in the context of myself, one of the first things you start to realize once you cross that threshold of I guess once you start getting when you dedicate your life to the seriousness of this alchemy, of this interchange, of this quest, of this consciousness. One of the first things you realize is that you not only can you use a whole wealth of different information, you must use a whole wealth of different information. It is death to pick one path. You are absolutely doing nothing if you pick one path. If you call yourself one name or call yourself one kind of individual, there's all of these paths lead to the same form of life. So it's easy for me to accept when you say that the Moors of old did this, because anybody who's dealing with higher information would come to this almost natural understanding. Anybody who has an ego and is trying to prove a point is going to run that same point, that theology, that idea to the ground, debate it, sit at, if they're not debating it, they're going to sit at a debate and cheer for the shit they believed in anyway before they got there. And no matter what the other side says when they debate, they're going to walk out believing the same shit. So it's not like they came to learn.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They came to cheerlead and reinforce their narrow view, because this particular view may have saved them from something lesser, like Christianity or whatever, but they still don't have. But they're being saved from Christianity is not doing alchemy. It's not doing magic. It's not becoming the ancient man. It's not becoming the God. Being saved from Christianity is exactly that. Being saved from Christianity. You may call it Islam, Nuwabian, dark magic, Moor. You may call it these things, but if you're just stuck there, then that's exactly what you are. You gave up one religion for the next. So when you say it, it seems so obvious.
Right. Just like I've seen, those was waiting for white Jesus to come out the sky. Now they waiting for a UFO to save them. So they did nothing but change one mythology for another one in which that, you know what I'm saying, in which they banking on. So
niggas said they can't stand Christmas. Now they just give out gifts at Kwanzaa. You know what I'm saying? Now they just say Umaji or whatever. It's a different way of saying Merry Christmas. And before that, you were saying Happy Hanukkah, whatever the fuck. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And before you waited for an alien to come save you, you were waiting for, before it became after white Jesus, but he got lamb's hair and his feet are bronze, so he's really black. And now, like you said, it's an alien. And then for the dark side niggas, it's Lucifer. And for people with dreads, it's Oshun. You know what I mean? It's somebody else. You would do everything not to go take this inner journey inside. And this inner journey inside, there's so many paths in. So it becomes more of a path than Kabbalah, than dark magic, than Islam, than Nuwabian, than Gnosticism. It's all of these paths to the inside. It's like you're in a fucking candy store. So when I hear people saying that they just all about this and that's what they about, it's the most sad thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So now this still brings me to a question though, which this is why I'm keep going back to, because I don't want these questions were coming up while you were speaking. So now, if the Moors of old were dealing with different sciences, it's clear that what made you define yourself as a Moor had nothing to do with a religion or a field of study. So what would define you as a Moor? Just being a black man. So what would make him a Moor and him not a Moor, if that's the case? And we're still talking about the Moors of old. What would say he's a Moor and he's not a Moor?
Well, actually, when you go to the Greek, the word Moor was one of the first times in which that it was used there, and it was spelled M-A-U-R, but that was actually from the ancient mystery school system. The Ethiopians, or the Cushites as they was called, Abyssinians, they were actually the high priests of the Egyptian mystery school, and they was called Moors, or M-A-U-R, S. You can get this from E.A. Wallace Budge's book, Hieroglyphics, Egyptian Hieroglyphics. And also, I think, from the Legend of the Gods, Volume 1 and 2. But in those particular books by E.A. Wallace Budge, he says the Moors were the high priests of the Neter and Nu. And Nu is on, which is a form of Ra or Re. So they actually was the high priest of Ra. So when we talk about the Amen Ra, such as the Masonic school in which that Dr. Ben, put together, which is called the Craft of Amen Ra, that was him attempting to reinstitute, that mythos, and, through the rituals and the various rites, So, when we get to that, that's really, where we need to be focusing at, So, until that happens, we're going to have a lot of
okay.
Right.
So now it sounds, and tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds like being called a Moor in this is talking about the ancient or the historical Moor sounds more like a title.
Right.
A title.
It was really a title. It had nothing to do with a nationality.
A race or religion. Right, a race or religion. Okay.
Right, or ethnicity or a particular color. We're talking about in its most ancient, what is called denotative meaning, as compared to the cognitive meaning that we have now. The cognitive meaning that we have now has branched out, as we know, dealing with nationality, dealing with ethnicity, dealing with color, so forth and so on, dealing with Islam, a religion. That's how they have now used the word Moor. But in its original state, the ancient Egyptians, the Cushites was known as the Moors because they was the high priest of Anu. So, like you said, it was a title. That title later on of the high priest of Anu becomes in the New Testament and the Old Testament, in particular. But in particular, in the New Testament, it becomes the Order of Melchizedek.
Got you. Okay. In the New Testament, the Moor becomes the Order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek,
right.
Oh, okay. Now I've heard. That makes sense because I've heard basically. This makes a lot of sense now because basically what I've heard, the Order of Melchizedek was basically a group of adepts that would come together that study all different systems. So they weren't coming together to debate. It was like that was the highest order based upon the best of the best would show up in this grouping. Oh, okay. See, now that makes a lot of sense. And that speaks yet again towards this idea of the Moors having more than one system as opposed to just Islam, which makes so much sense because I'm always hearing Moorish science and Moorish magic, and I know as a guy even in this time dealing with science and magic, you cannot deal with it under one umbrella. It can't be done. You can't be done. So if they had these titles that was guaranteed that for them to have, it makes common sense. It's common sense for me they were dealing with more than one system. There was a movie, Quentin Tarantino, True Romance, and in it there was a monologue said, and everybody should remember this monologue. There was Italian dudes leaning on this on the guy. And he knew he was about to die, and he said, well, give me one of them cigarettes. And when he lit the cigarette, he basically said, somebody read a lot of history. And basically I was reading the history in Italy, in Sicily. And he said there was these black dudes called the Moors. And he said what the black dudes did when they got there was a whole lot of fucking. He said, and blonde hair turned to black hair. And blue eyes turned to black eyes. And he said, so your great-great-grandmother fucked a nigga, and that's why you look like you look now. And, of course, he got killed for that shit. But just saying that, if you isolate what he was saying, first of all, Quentin Tarantino wrote that dialogue. That was directed by somebody else, but this was before Quentin Tarantino blew up. And he was still writing movies at this time. So he wrote that dialogue. Just for him to say that says a lot. And ultimately, we have heard, and you've said today, that one of the missions of the Moors to try to dignify the savage Caucasus race was to try to inject So at least we can cultivate them to some form of dignity. You get what I'm saying? Right. Some this mess on the planet. That's the only way we could almost give them some form of uprightness, if you want to call it. So,
right.
For Quentin Tarantino to know something like this, what source of information would or could he be dealing with that would give him that? Would white masonry deal with this, in other words?
Yes, but also The Ancient and Modern Britain by David Marici, Volume 1 and Volume 2, as well as also The Moors After Spain by Stanley Poole. As well as also just knowing basic history as far as the children of Hannibal, they went up and conquered, Italy, and portion of that boot, you have Sicily, in which that, where the mob come from, and so forth and so on, and but they was called the Black Mob, originally, and that's that history comes from is actually from Hannibal's children mixing in with them, on that particular island right off the coast of the boot, which is called Italy. Those things took place, historically. So he knew the story, he knew the history, and plus,
it's not hard
hanging around centers, such as Wu-Tang Clan and different other ones. So, I'm pretty sure that's where he got a lot of his information from.
Gotcha. Okay. So makes sense. All right, let me ask. So, I guess I'm going to inject this because I always hear about this guy, and I haven't had the privilege of hearing his information. But a gentleman named Hakeem Bey. So and I know you know about Hakeem Bey. Around the time, what was his impact, and what are some of the things he brought? Because a lot of new Moors I don't want to say line up under him, but I know his information is worthy to a lot of new Moors. So how does he fit in to the scenario? Because I know he had a big impact.
Right. Well, I would say Hakeem Bey probably was me 20 years ago. He was dropping the same information, that I'm dropping now. In a lot of ways. He was talking about how the Moors was Kabbalistic and how they dealt with, and he defined the Moor science, like we said, magic, teachings, alchemy, as well as also how those evolved from out of the African system. Of what we now refer to as Ifa, Yoruba, Congo, right, or what is known as Palomayombe, and so forth and so on. He speaks about the origin of these particular magical systems and how they came from that, these magical systems into Europe, in order to find a conclusion to that equation. Here it is, the Egyptians was messing around, creating man in their image and after the likeness, and like we said, the Moors was the high priest of that order. So that means that they the ones who actually was the ones tampering with the genealogy. So they felt it was their obligation to those in which that this information passed on to, because if you go to Stolen Legacy by George D. James, he specifically states that the Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery school.
Right.
So they felt it was their obligation in order to correct the situation. Okay, well, we fucked up, we made them, so we got to do something with them.
We got to deal with them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. So now, real quickly, let's deal with the average new Moor. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to put you in a position where you have to talk bad about anybody, but if you was to meet the average new Moor, what's the average new Moor's biggest problem in terms of how he's dealing up against the old ancient Moor and their old intention, as opposed to basically what you started to talk a little bit about being stuck on these new things. But what do you see the most, and what do you see can be corrected if you know what I mean? If you just could wave a wand.
Right. Well, number one, most Moors aren't spiritual enough in order to comprehend the science of breath,
They're too busy dealing with mundane things such as, mortgage,
exactly,
credit repair, all these things, have their place. However, the major science, which that, was taught by the ancients were the science of breath. Matter of fact, is in the Holy Quran, Surah 7, where the Prophet Muhammad Ali speaks about the holy breath and how the holy breath will make us one with Allah again. So that was that was the highest science, in which that the Moors taught when it comes to Moor science, with the science of breath, and how it unifies the lower self with the higher self and merge to become just one self, which is Allah itself, or what is called the mother of virtues, which is the higher self. So we understood that, most Moors now are getting caught up, like I said, in just the historical aspects or just the colorable law aspects, and they too busy trying to define what's law and what isn't law. You know what I'm saying? We know what law is. Law is universal law. Law does not change. You know what I'm saying? It can be manipulated, but it cannot be changed. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you have high magic and you have low magic. Low magic is used in order to, just like you trying to do with a frequency, you're trying to jam a frequency. You know what I'm saying? In order to manipulate it and change it for your, for your time and place, or for your purpose at that, during that time and place. That is low, and sometimes that is needed. You know what I'm saying? High magic, really don't choose to, try to jam the frequency. High magic just deals with it and act as it is. In other words, they got to the stage where their mind is so powerful that they just draw whatever they want to them, mentally. They don't have to do any rituals. You know what I'm saying? Such as within low magic. Low magic is to get you to the high magic. But you have to, low magic, you have to use tools. You have to use cards. You use numerology.
You have to exercise. You need the symbols to exercise that point that can magnetize your thoughts. Or you get to that point where your thoughts your thoughts reign supreme, as opposed to you needing tools to do it. That's absolutely correct. So let me ask you this, because what I often hear is I hear this statement, more is science, and then when I say, well, okay, tell me about more is science, I start hearing about law. So is that true? Is that what more is science is? And if it's not true, how far from true is that?
Right. Well, more science deals with universal law, which is the 7 laws of Tahuti: mentalism, polarity, correspondence, cause and effect, which is karma, goes around, comes around, reap what you sow, as well as gender, which is sex, as well as also polarity. So these are the 7 laws of Tahuti. So, yes, in that regard, that is more science.
Right.
But by utilizing basics of that law, of those particular, of that system of law, is what developed into what we now call natural law, what we now call common law, what we now call constitutional law, and how colorable law deviates from that particular structure. Okay, because even the word constitution means that body. So it's talking about a body of law, how your physical body is made up of those 7 universal laws.
Gotcha.
So this is that is real law, or de jure law, as we call it. But de facto law is what we call colorable law, which deals with rules, regulations, ordinances, codes, statutes, so forth and so on. That is colorable because those particular laws may not necessarily agree with universal law or natural law. So therefore, it actually has no credence whatsoever in a natural person's life or a natural being's life. You know what I'm saying? In other words, we don't have to abide by that because that shit ain't real. A seatbelt, wearing a seatbelt, what the fuck is that? I ain't make the car. So if I didn't make the car, then that means I don't have to wear the seatbelt. That is from the manufacturer. You know what I'm saying? And, how the hell can you enforce
a seatbelt law, and now to make the shit up to $250 for the violation of it.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
You know, and I'm not saying everybody don't go out there and don't wear a seatbelt. I'm not saying that. I'm saying some of these things are not required. In other words, it's not real law. They might be suggestions. Yes, I don't have a problem with suggestions. Yes, buckle up. Okay, I think that might be a good idea. I have no problem with that.
Right.
But for you to force it on and make it mandatory,
right,
and charge me for violation.
Charge me for violation.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between real law and imaginary or colorable law.
Exactly.
Okay. So I hear people talking about this imaginary law, or even how they oppose it as more science. You know what I mean?
Bingo.
Even the opposition of it. Science is,
because they don't never tell you about the universal laws of Tahuti and how it goes back to ancient Egypt. Being that Prophet Noble said he was an Egyptian adept.
Right. To me, that makes so much sense.
Well, go back
when you say it,
go back to Arabism. The Arabs said that this. The Arabs say that this is shirk. The Arabs say that this is, they always go back to Arab. About the Arab.
Right.
We had a religious system and practice and rituals prior to the Arabs' existence on this planet.
Got you. Right. So right. How do you even quote that as your foundation?
Right. How you quote that as your foundation? And then they say, well, Shari is the law. Bro, that's Arab. That's Arab law. Okay, they say in the Shari, if you steal, I'm cutting off your hand. We didn't do that shit in Africa.
Right. Got you.
We did not have jails in Africa.
No.
Right. In fact, I heard Bobby Hemming said if in the rare occasion there was a thief in Africa, the priest knew how to put a mark in their DNA. That when they even have a kid, the kid would be born with this birthmark, and the people would know in that lineage that somebody in your lineage stole, and to watch out for your ass.
And then bingo. Now we got to mark them. Marks the spot for that nigga.
Right. So, I was going to ask you something that almost escaped my mind. Oh, I was going to say that, you see, it makes so much sense when you say this, that when you say the laws, you're talking about Tahuti's laws. Now, if somebody asked me in a common sense what law is, that's what I would say. But hearing so many Moors talk online, which is the only place I can really hear them, or in whatever circles I'm in, I didn't even bridge that until you said that. You get what I'm saying?
And nobody else did either.
In my natural thought, if we'd been sitting in my class, soon as somebody said the laws, I would say, no, the laws are the laws of Tahuti. That's it. But it didn't even cross my mind. You get what I'm saying? Because it's so much. It's not. I've never heard someone speaking to this information. Like I said, but I did miss out on Hakeem Bey. I know you heard speak on it, and it would just make so much more sense if this could be clear. You know what I mean? It just fits it in the scenario for me. It just fits it in. Now, okay, I guess you spoke on it a little bit, but let's talk just a little bit more about the Moors in Egypt. Now, you pointed out that it was more of a priesthood, but just some things because so we could understand, because you kind of get the feeling that the Moors you get the feeling that the historical Moors just somehow emerged in Europe to teach white people in the 1800s or the 800s or whatever year they claim. You don't get the understanding of how it led up to that, or how it got there, or where they fit into this ancient picture. And when we show that, we'll understand why Noble Drew Ali.
I was going to say that amazingly, the majority of so-called historians and scholars don't know either, and that's what really gets me. But yes, the Moors are the Cushites, and Prophet Noble Ali shows you that within the Holy Quran Circle 7. When he speaks about Africa, he speaks about old man Cush, and those people who came to Cush, which was the Egyptians. So, I mean, he has all of that in there, especially in chapter 47. You know, we speak about the dominion of Egypt and how the dominion of Egypt actually was the capital of the world at one time. And that is the truth. All historians tell us that everyone from every school on the planet went to Egypt to learn. You know? Whether it was in Mesopotamia, whether they was in Indo-Kush, wherever they were, they went to Egypt. And this is a known fact. Even during the Alexandria Library, 700,000 scrolls and tablets and so forth and so on was there, before the burning, in which that it verified the fact that everyone came from, converged upon Egypt, which was the mouth of Africa. You know what I'm saying? They came there to do their research and their study. This is how the various religions spread it out. And we know this from a book known as, what's the name of it, by Sheikh Anta Diop. The name of the book is called Ancient Civilization. The Ancient Civilization. I believe the name of it. But in the book Ancient Civilization, Sheikh Anta Diop, he speaks about the fact that around 500 BC, there was various priests who left out of Egypt, and they went into the various areas of the land, and this is how the religions was formed, whether it was Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. These priests came from out of Egypt, and he makes mention of this, that this occurred around 500 BC, in his book, Civilization. So, when people go and do their research, they would see that the Egyptians, who actually were the Cushites, because the Egyptians were a colony of the Cushites. This is known within the wonderful Ethiopians, wonderful Ethiopian Cushite Empire, written by Drusilla Houston, Dunjee Houston. She states that within that particular book, is that, and these same Cushites were the same ones who was over the ancient Egyptian mysteries, over the priesthood, in which that their title was called Moors, in which that meant that they were the high priests of Anu, which is, Anu supposed to be a deity or the nectar from out of the Sumerian text. When you read the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Enuma Elish, they speak about Anu. But here it is, Anu is being made mention of within the Egyptian information. But then they want to say that that the Mesopotamia civilization was formed before the Egyptian empire, and that's not the case.
Oh, it is not.
No.
No, it's not. We got texts of information in which they actually show hieroglyphics on the walls of Mesopotamia, in which they are Egyptian hieroglyphics, as a matter of fact. And they have the same images of Sebek there in Samaria, the same image of Ra, the same image of Amen, the same image of Mayat. All of them is right there on the walls of Samaria. When we went to the British Museum, we seen them. My wife and I saw them at the British Museum back in 2008. And we took pictures. This is verified. You know what I'm saying? So people can say that the first Sumerians were Egyptians, or we would say Cushites.
Gotcha. What is the general understanding that the Sumerians were first? Is that the general white scholar understanding, or does it come out of one source?
Right, that came from Zachariah Sitchin, who was trying to... that's where
that alone, right.
That came from his book.
That alone.
Right, that came from his book, The Genesis. Genesis Revisited in that book, and also I think from the 12th Planet. I think one of them was written like around back in 1973.
Right.
1973, 1976, written in between there, in between that period in which that he was the one in which that made mention of. Also with Daniken. Daniken made mention of it too in his Chariot of the Gods. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
okay.
This was
well, that dude is so left behind as well. With that
right.
one
So
book.
this was the consensus during that time period. You know what I'm saying? In which that was before, in the analysis.
Yeah, and I think Brother Bobby pointed out that Stitchen was paid to put out a lot of misinformation. He's the same dude that said all that Anunnaki shit and they were evil and the Anunnaki is this race that came down, which is all bullshit.
Exactly.
So, that makes sense. So, okay. You see, so basically, the Moors in Egypt is basically just another group, a priesthood, another group of black folks that was always there.
Right.
Okay, that was always there because we get this whole thing with them with his coming up in. But let's even talk about some of the impact in Europe. It took me a while. It really didn't take me a while, but it occurred to me. We used to always see on cartoons. Bugs Bunny used to say music cured the average beast. Right. And then we used to see, then I used to hear rumors, Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and all the rest of these Lenowskis were black people. Then later I heard they were Moors. Mozart. Right. Then later I heard they were Moors. Then I put two and two together when I started studying about the chakras and you'll hear this so-called classical music that these Mozarts and all of them created. You'll hear about this classical music, and that same one piece will be played in the key of A or the key of C or the key of D, which corresponds to each different chakra. So it sounds like, so I started, when I put the Bugs Bunny thing together, I said, when it calms the average beats, they're talking about this so-called classical music, which is our Moorish music, being played that it speaks to different chakra system of these beasts in Europe when the Moors are there cultivating them. And then you'll hear things like finishing schools. Why would anyone need to walk with a book on their head or even sit there and learn how to eat with forks and knives unless they were sticking their goddamn face directly in the plate? You know what I'm saying? Like it was a puppy or some shit. So it started occurring to me for years. They were showing you some of the teachings that the Moors were training them with or teaching them.
Exactly.
So those years they were in Europe. How true is those statements and anything else you would have to add to when they were training in Europe?
Right, that is absolutely correct. And music does calm the savage beasts, and that's what we was dealing with. And so when we was, coming along and doing the, putting together classical music, and we did it specifically to hit those particular chakras in order to, calm them down so that we can actually train them. So of course the music would be played, you know what I'm saying, and oftentimes you see that even in many movies, when you go to during the times of the of the Enlightenment period, there always had to be some type of music played, whether it was from the Fool who was doing a comedy skits or whatever he was doing. There was always some type of music that had to be played.
Right.
So absolutely correct, and that was one of the methods in which that music was tapping into the chakra system. Like you said, do, re, mi, fa, la, ti, do, 7 plus 1, which takes you to the next octave, or the higher octave of the same do to do, those 7 in between the do to do, all the sounds in which that activates the chakra system, in which that we now know them as the vowels, A, E, O, U, and sometimes Y, sometimes H, but these are the sounds in which that activates the particular endocrine glands, in which that helps, calm anyone, as a matter of fact, beast or savage or
right. Just to balance the chakras.
Right, to balance the chakras, right. And so we definitely understood that to the highest degree, and that's more science. That's more of the more science. Music is more science, so it's no coincidence that you had an interest in music coming up. I had an interest in music. Most people who are right hemisphere thinkers and and are spiritual, in dealing with this information, had to have been musicians. You know what I'm saying? In their earlier life, more than likely, because we had to be taught how to read music, how to play the music, and then then take that information later on and parlay it into writing and art, and but it's always based on a right hemisphere thinking pattern.
Okay, makes sense. So bathhouses, because you always see these Turkish bathhouses, and and all of that stuff is all what the Moors were doing in Europe, showing them how to wash, basically.
Right. Exactly, because that's much of their illnesses and diseases, even during the bubonic plague, in which that killed 25 million Europeans. That came by way of the Moors. The Moors killed off the 25 million Europeans based on the bubonic plague, in which that came from rat disease, as they would say, because many of them could not be civilized. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or say, well, shoot, we dealt with the engineering, and so this is probably part of the reason of what's going on now with them trying to genocide us off the planet because of that historical fact.
You know something? That's so on point, and it makes so much sense because there's that book, Dirt. It's out of print, and I can't remember the author, but they were immune. In fact, the origin of vaccinations comes from the science what they were dealing with dirt, because they didn't have melanin or anything to protect them. What they would do was go head deep in anything dirty to build up an immunity to it, which is the same vaccination concept, that they actually shoot you with the filth, and your body naturally builds up an immunity for it. So in this book, Dirt, which makes sense why now, because I can't see the bubonic plague or any rat killing them off, because the shit that they were dealing with was insane. I couldn't even read the whole book, but they was telling the queen would take a bath once a year, maybe. You get what I'm saying? And they were saying things like what they would do, like a man was known for his fleas. And half this shit we get with chivalry is like, you're supposed to walk on the outside of a woman, she's supposed to walk on the inside. This is because they used to throw shit and piss out the windows, and it was considered manly or gentlemanly for you to take the piss and shit hit. When you see on cartoons where they used to take off
the Erosion of Civilization by David Montgomery.
Okay, that's right. Dirt, that's it. And when you see it on Bugs Bunny, they do this shit on Bugs Bunny a lot, though. This moral shit. Remember when Bugs used to take off his jacket and lay it over a puddle? That comes from, this is in this book, Dirt, that all the shit and piss, because they had no sewer system, used to pile up at the curbs. So you would take off your jacket, let the lady walk over it, and then put the shit back on with all the shit and piss. Those pajamas that they used to show on Bugs Bunny with the two buttons in the back, that one piece. Popeye used to wear that shit. They said that shit is from dirt too, because they wouldn't take off their fucking clothes. Their clothes was like their skin. So they used to just unbutton it and shit through that and button it back up. They wouldn't take off their shit for years. They used to sleep in the house with cats. So they was immune to this level of filth. So something coming along, they already had the immunity, like vaccination. So it seems like the Moors would have to come to. And then you hear, now you understand when you hear when Columbus came over to the so-called New World, that thousands of Native Americans died, which we're going to get into that as well. Native Americans died just on handshakes alone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They said, we're going to kill them just by sleeping with their women. Nothing else.
Right.
They didn't have to pull out no guns and knives. Just going to sleep with their women.
Yep.
So it makes so much sense of how filthy these motherfuckers was. That book, Dirt, I would say if you can get it, you'll read a few pages and you won't even waste your time with it, because you'll be like, you'll see who they are. They banned that shit because he was telling on himself. You know what I'm saying? So it makes so much sense that you say now the Moors are trying to kill their asses off, kill the weak ones off, and try to fuck some sanity into the rest.
Right, exactly.
All right, so let's move on, which I found very powerful information in your book, which is kind of inspiring why I'm asking these questions. The name of the book is the same as this radio show First World Order, and I'm sure you can get it, I'm clear you can get it from dralimbey.com, his website. A must read. You go into a lot of information we need to get to the questioning, some of the questions we're going to get into the Empress and all of these things. And first and foremost, around 10 o'clock, they start closing the chat room. So if you guys want to be in the after hours, you might want to call in now. The number is 626-414-3535. That's 626-414-3535. And before we go on to the next portion, because I want to get into some of the OMACs, how they fit in America. We're going to bring this to America now. Let me get my commercial out the way. What you can do now, everybody, send me go to my website. I got a new website, occultlectures.com. That's occultlectures.com. And on it, you'll find information and you'll find all my products. There's over 20-something different types of herb packs, over 20-something different types of oils now, a lot of new stuff, information about my classes, when the next cycle is, payment plans for classes, spiritual powders. Like I said, 20-something different types of herb packs. So if it's all laid out, you can get it directly there. Or you guys can still email me, panicpack@hotmail.com. If you guys are trying to get into my class, you need to do it now. June 1st is the next class. That's on Sunday. So you need to get in with it now. For those who've already paid either their down payment, we'll be doing it June 1st, but now is the time to get in. If you don't know, I give a 4-week class on magic. If you can't make it to my house, we do it through Skype. I've taught people all around the world. This is about the 13th cycle we're in, so this is like clockwork. It is probably one of the best things you could do to start experiencing the alchemy or this magical apparatus. Like I said and always said, you don't have to take my word for it. When you email me, you can ask the people who have taken the class and see what they have to say, how it changed their lives. But now is the time to do it. We do a cycle every month. Now is the time you want to get in on this class. This is the best thing you can do for your life. And if you're not prepared for the class, the other thing you can do for your life is get my standard herb pack. It opens up the pineal gland. It opens up the third eye. It's basically medicine to help you open up your third eye, raise your once you do your meditation, raise your kundalini, whatever you do, this acts as a supreme aid in that process. This is hands down shit that works. This is not guesswork. This is something that I've been selling for over 6-7 years now. So this shit is certified. So if you haven't got an herb pack, it's time to get one. You can get it from my site, occultlectures.com, or you can email me at panicpack@hotmail.com. Go ahead and get what you need. And like I said, it's on. If you're trying to do something to experience this shit, these are the tools that'll help you do it. Also, if there's other tools in your magical path. If you can't get them from me, I guarantee you can get them from dralimbey.com. He's got books. He's got his lectures. I recommend the chakra stones that he has, but don't stop there. His whole store, which he used to have in North Carolina, is now online. So you got candles, crystals, gemstones, oils, powders, or you name it. I'm sure he can either get it or whatever. All this stuff, and I know you guys need it because you email me all the time trying to find specific items. Well, Alim is that one-stop place that you can get it from, AlimElBay.com. And like I said, I just launched occultlectures.com. This is the place to be. Also, you can email me if you want to see some things up there because I'm still building that site. But right now, all my product and all the new product is up there. These are things that help you. Very important. All right. So now that the commercial's out the way, we're going to get back to the lecture. And I'm going to ask Alim. Now we're going to bring this thing to, we went to the ancient more, we went to a little bit of what they were doing in Europe. So now we're going to bring this thing to America. Most people, most humans think that black people came to America, on slave ships, that we didn't exist here before. And it doesn't make no sense because we all co-signed that we was Lemurian, Atlanta, and this was a big one landmass at one point, and that we're the oldest thing going. Like, I can't see how we co-signed that we're here for thousands of years before a white person, but no one was in America that was black. So that doesn't make any sense. So I know you guys, based upon your book, First World Order, that you teach different. So could you explain some of how the Moors or black folks were in America before the so-called history teaches us we were?
Right. If they go to Dr. Clyde Winter's website, he breaks down the fact that 5,000 years ago, at least documented, we have the Olmecs in Mexico or the Yucatan Peninsula, which is near La Venta, Tabasco area, right off the Gulf of Mexico. All right, and so what happens is that we even have further documentation that they was there prior to the 5,000, but that's just when they say that the pyramids were built there or began, being built there within South America, on up into Central America, on up into the Americas, also with the mounds. This is all the same people. So we see the movement of the Olmecs out of Mexico into South America, along the Central America, and even into the Mississippi, along the Mississippi, throughout the South, all up along the eastern seaboard, and along the Midwest, Detroit, Chicago, and et cetera, and then all the way along the western portion up along California. So really, anyone who came to the Pacific or either to the Atlantic side of what we now call the United States or America, in particular North America, they would see us. So we actually are the descendants of portions of the Olmecs. We know that fossils actually were in Arizona and Nevada area over 75,000 years ago based on National Geographic, and they were also called black people. Then we also have Children of Mu, written by James Churchward, Colonel James Churchward, who documented that the Twa people were on the Hawaiian Islands, in which that was called El Moria 2 million years ago.
Okay, let me ask you really quick. The Twa people, because I was just reading something on the Easter Island and the statues of Easter Island. Was that connected to the Twa people?
Yes, it is. Matter of fact, that is exposed in the book by Gerald Massey Lectures, as well as also in the book by Celestial Ships of the North by Valencia, and as well as also in the book Ancient and Modern Britons by David Church, by Matt Ricci. So it's been put out there now for over 100 years as far as that truth being told. So the 12, who they refer to, the Pygmies, are the founders and the establishers of a lot of these pyramids, mounds, and temples. This is why In Mexico, you would see that the steps, as well as also the temple height, is for someone who would have been less than 5 feet tall.
Okay. The Mexican city, pyramid city.
Right. The Mexican city, such as Chesapeake, Tulum, Cobol, and many different other ones there in Mexico. This was for someone who had to have been less than 5 feet tall. They had to be about 4 feet, 4 feet and a half at the most. But all their structures is for someone who's about 5 feet tall, as well as also the steps. Like I have size 13 feet. So if you took your foot, actually it would have been like a size 7.
Right.
For someone to step up those particular steps. So we understand is that these were the Tuar or the Pygmies because the structures of these pyramids and the height of them is based on someone of short stature.
Okay, stature, right. The best search, short stature. So,
stature.
Okay, so now the Olmec, the stuff I read, there's a book called Mystery of the Olmecs.
Right, Mysteries of the Olmecs, right, by David Childress.
David Childress. That's David Childress? I didn't even realize that. That maybe.
Even Zacharias Sitchin wrote a book called The Lost Realms, in which that he reveals the Olmecs were the old people in the Western Hemisphere.
Right, because that's what I was going through, and that's what Childress goes through about the Olmecs really being the origin, because most people think that the Aztecs or the Mayans built those pyramids out in Mexico, but Childress, and not just him, many people understand that they got all of that from the Olmecs and later inherited those, the Toltecs and all of them inherited those pyramids. So how does the Olmec fit into it, and do they have a Moorish connection?
Yes, because the Olmecs are Malians. They was actually part of the Mandingo people or the Mandingo people who was related to the Dogon. The Dogon, ancient astrologers or the high priest astrologers in ancient Kemet, and they left out of Egypt around 8,000 years ago or 6,000 BC, in which that, of course, based on the coming about of this demiurge on this planet, as we would say, of the Albion, and them tampering with the genetics and everything, the Dogon said we didn't want any part of that, and so left out of ancient Egypt, and they moved into, and the descendants of the Mandingo or the Mandi people, in which that is the Olmecs, and the Olmecs left out of West Africa in search of another area or territory in order to explore, in which that they came to the Americas. You had Mansa Musa, who was the richest man on the planet, Mansa Musa, and actually compare his wealth to the wealth of these Europeans, he would still outweigh them as far as wealth is concerned, and he had 200 ships on which that sailed over to meet his brothers here in the Americas, and there's no record of them ever returning. So not only do you have the Olmecs was here 5,000 years ago, then you also had Mansa Musa and them who came here over 1,000 some odd years ago, or nearly 1,000 years ago or so, in which that they had 200 ships in which that they sailed over here. So so this is all still before the arrival of Christopher Columbus or and the so-called stories that they told us about in elementary, junior high, and high school, and college. Right. So this is still way before them. And so you think about 200 ships. You thinking about their brothers who was already here, the Olmecs, who was already here thousands of years prior to them, and of course over thousands of is, you talking about the population rate. Come on. We estimated that it had to be at least 125 million people that was here prior to the Europeans coming 400 years ago. And based on their diseases, them sexing the sheep, in which that produce syphilis, as well as also them bringing smallpox, right, and putting smallpox on the blankets. William Hearst did that. General William Hearst, Colonel William Hearst. I don't know which. I think he was known as Colonel William Hearst, but I think he got the degree or the rank of general. But they had smallpox put on blankets given to the Pontiac Indians, in which that illness, spread it all the way up into Alaska, all the way down into South America. Killing off, out of the 150 million, we talking about 90 million who was killed, specifically here within North America. And so if you had, 125 million out of 90 million, or 90 million out of 125 million, I should say, you have about 35 million, in which that was still here. So think of that large population. They couldn't do anything but, basically enslave us, because we were too large of a population to put on a reservation.
Right, gotcha. Right.
So they had to come up with this story that, well, since they are so dark, they'll believe the story that they just came from Africa. But in the process, that was stripping us of our land rights. And then throwing them artificial labels on us, saying, well, they Negro, colors, and blacks, or whatever else that they want to be called, and therefore no land rights, no land connection, hence we become a stateless and nationless people, and that's what they turned us over to. This is why, and if this isn't true, then America has to answer for the fact. The United States specifically have to answer for the fact. Why is it that here it is, 145 years later, up from slavery, basically, that we're still not U.S. citizens.
Right.
And there's no way possible for us to be if a president every 25 years has to give us voting rights privileges.
Right.
And why is it that, the so-called Constitution that specifically states that, we're a three-fifth person, and then, of course, you have the 14th Amendment, in which that's supposed to ratified, been ratified, and supposedly have done away with what they call they call it, Dred Scott versus Sanford case. But yet, if that was all done, why are we still in the same dilemma, as we were, 145 years ago upon the so-called release of, coming from slavery? Nothing has changed. So this is how you know that, this is all ploy, because they know that they're just, thieves, and they just came here on the. I mean, hell, they told us they came here on the on the boat.
Nina, Santa Maria.
Right, Santa Maria, Penta, right. They told us they came here on these particular boats, and they sailed to Plymouth Rock, and and all these types of things. They the ones who told us that they was invaders, but they never answered. As far as who we actually are. Yes, we might be dark as Africans, and yes, the Olmecs did come from Africa, no doubt about it, but that was 5,000 years ago. But you have not answered, was that us 400 years ago, a portion of our bloodline? You know what I'm saying? And then, have you answered the fact of where are the ships at? 145 years ago, we know the European mindset. They just like... just like I told them, I said, shit, if I see a McDonald's on the moon, then I know they went. You know what I'm saying? This dude is all about, show and tell. Okay, well, show and tell where them goddamn boats are at, you know what I'm saying, that y'all claim that y'all bought us here on. I ain't seen this shit yet.
Right.
My wife been to the Louvre. Me and my wife been to the damn British Museum. I've been to my wife. I've been to the Smithsonian.
Right, I went there too. Right, and never seen it.
Right, we've been to all these goddamn museums, and I ain't seen a goddamn ship yet.
you know, some shit. That shit never even occurred to me. I ain't never seen one of them motherfuckers. I ain't never even heard about one of them motherfuckers. We got one of the ships, and this is how bad and terrible it looks.
Right.
We got a museum. We got a museum now. You know, it's in a museum. I've never heard of that. Come to think of it, while we talking about this, all these ship shit, I've never seen one. And they love it, and they would love to put that shit on display.
They would love to put that on display. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? You can go in Atlanta and go to the Coca-Cola Hall of Fame right now.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Right now.
They love to put their little bullshit on display. That little funky ass poison they've been selling since the inception of this motherfucker. They got that shit. You could taste all the sodas from around the world. Like, they love their shit. So this is interesting because shit like this never occurred to me. Like, where are the fucking ships at? There was so fucking many.
Exactly. There was so many, and you brought so many of us over here. Where the shit at? That's what I'm saying.
We was here. Right. Where the shit at? Because you know they would love. They'll put that shit right on Times Square. That should be a carnival ride if they had one of them motherfuckers.
Thank you.
You'd be able to walk in that motherfucker and order some chicken wings and fried rice. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right.
You goddamn. That's interesting. That's a very interesting point. Where are these ships at? Especially if there's supposed to be so many. And not just even in America. You don't see them around any place in the world. Wherever they were sailing back from. You get what I'm saying? You don't even see them there.
So here it is, over 145, actually it's about 160 years now, or about 159 years, to be right exact, you know. But here it is, you telling me that, he done found monuments of shit in Egypt, done found monuments of shit in Samaria, done found monuments of shit in the Americas. But yet, no shit.
Easter Island statues, Olmec heads, mounds. Shit, there's a mound in Long Island. You know what I'm saying? Shit.
Exactly, mounds in Long Island. Where the fuck is this shit 159 years ago?
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. That's an excellent point. Excellent point. So that's further points to the reality that we were already here. We were already here.
The vast majority of us was already here. The Emperor says about 80% of our bloodline was already here, and only about 15% actually came from Africa. And matter of fact, even Wikipedia would tell you that it was that they actually only brought about 500,000 here to North America.
Got you. Mm-hmm. Got you. Yeah, because we know that root shit was bullshit. That root shit was made up.
But Alex Haley was a Mason who sold himself out, in which that that's what that was done for. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And come to find out, the whole thing about his blood lineage and all that shit going back to Africa in that particular way, all that shit was fraudulent.
All fraudulent. In fact, this on Roots I bought in maybe 2004. You know, I had to look at it for the update when I was conscious. And it meant absolutely nothing. But at the end, they had commentaries of the people at the time and people later. I eventually gave it to Bobby. He was trying to give it back. The shit was funny. So, you want Roots back? I was like, nah, keep it at your house. But I think I got him to watch the commentary because Alex Haley's brother was on that shit, and he was shitting all over Alex Haley. And this was later day when Alex Haley was already dead. He was saying how everybody thought this was going to impact people. I knew he was lying. Alex Haley went out his way for no black people to be involved in the production side of Roots because he didn't want it to have any emotional, any emotion to it. He wanted it to be straight from his book. So he needed white people to do this. So it was just so his brother was just basically holding his tongue, but shitting this in the dialect. So that was actually interesting. Maybe you can find it on YouTube by now. Just the extras or the end of Roots or commentary on Roots, which is real interesting how his brothers is basically calling the bullshit for what it was. All right, so now you mentioned the Empress, and this is real interesting because I was reading your book, and like I said, there was a lot of breakthrough information in it for me because no matter what Moors I talk to, you just don't really get down to a lot of meat. You get what I'm saying? Out here, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of taglines, but nothing that's really putting things in context. In fact, even like you doing tonight, you put an entire world, and I'm sure it's not just for me. If you're doing it for me, I know you're doing it for a lot of other people because I've really been, I consider myself a researcher, and it's very hard to get a lot of good research unless you become a Moor, and I'm only assuming that. But just someone who researches everything, it's hard to get down to the meat. So it's very rare you'll actually find a Moor like yourself who deals with actually this has the same mentality of now we finding out of Noble Drew Ali and the Moors of ancient that dealt with all forms of science. So to get this information from you, people need to understand is valuable because to me this has been valuable just in this session alone. And in your book, I also find it was very valuable as well because it puts so much in context, so much a lot about America, where we stand in America, and it really gave a lot of validation to those taglines that I always hear that a lot of new Moors really can't explain. They just emotionally connected to it, and really, like you said, dealing with the logical aspect, but they're not really putting it in a context where it fits into the whole fold. Now you did that because it's obvious that it does, but now you verbalized it, at least in this particular place for me. But I can see this is something that's already been going on with you based upon your book because in it, what stood out to me, or one of the things that stood out to me, which was kind of not really weird, but spiritual, was when you started talking about the Empress of the Washita Nation, which at that point I haven't heard of her because, like I said, it's very hard to get that information. But she stood out, and her image stood out, her power stood out to me personally. And then it turned out a few weeks after I read about her, she made the transition. Now, I know you also told me some things happened. So, of course, we're going to dedicate this show to her. Very powerful. She's also come back through.
We're going to dedicate the show to another one of my teachers, Sunyata Saraswati, who passed last night, too.
Oh.
So this is great.
You were just talking about him at my house.
Right.
We were just talking about him. You were just telling me about him at the house, man. Okay.
Right. So two great teachers of mine who passed within less than a month, actually just within a month and 3 days of each other. You know what I'm saying? That I got a chance in order to meet, as well as also, for him, I got a chance to sit up under him for years and get taught Tantra Kriya Yoga. You know what I'm saying? Qigong, Tai Chi, Reiki, and pranic-healing and different other energy modalities. So this is definitely dedicated to them, too. So, but let me get to the Empress.
Definitely. I was going to ask you before you go, before you explain her, on a more personal note, before she made the transition, you were telling me some things that synchronized with you spiritually. I don't know if you want to share it here with you and her. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Right. Well, she passed. Her transition, date was on my born day, which was April the 19th. Matter of fact, around the same time that I was born, based on what I was born around 5:34. She passed around 5:30. So, based on synchronicity, that takes me back to, the fact of, when we seen her in the hospital. Well, actually, it wasn't the hospital. She was in a nursing home, but she had strokes. She was still recovering from the 3 strokes and everything. This was back in 2004, May of 2004.
And how old was she, Alim?
She passed 87.
No, she was 87 years old.
At 87.
Okay, so just people have a context.
Right. She was born May 4th, 1927. And she passed April the 19th, 2014. So she was 87.
Okay.
Right. You know, just 2 weeks, you know, to her birthday. You know what I'm saying? She was a Taurus. And like, you know, like yourself, and like part of myself. All right.
Right.
You know, one of the first things that she asked us was who we were, our names and everything. But the most important thing that she told us, did y'all read my book? In reference to Return of the Ancient Ones. And we said, yes, ma'am. We definitely read your book. And she said, that's good. That's what y'all going to need in order to help, you know what I'm saying, keep this going. So by reading her book and then by giving the information by Professor Ravana Bey from out of Chicago, who was a third-generation Moore Science Temple of America, member, as well as also he was the Minister of Education for the Empire Washington Dr. Manya during the time of the Empress. Along with his information, then along with the teachings of the Crown Prince, Ramesses David Bey, later known as Prince Hutan Tupac Bey, who was the Crown Prince of the Empire Washington Dr. Manya, as well as also the founder and establisher of United Washington Dr. Manya Moors. Along with all this information, we was able to put together the First World Order book in which that brother Panic is talking about. Y'all can read a lot about her online, but the best place y'all can go in order to do the research and how we put all this information together is right on our website, United Washington History. That is dralimelbey.com. So just DRALIMELBEY.com. Go there and do your research on the Empress. Very intelligent. She dedicated, over 50 years, of her life to this information, getting it out to us, showing how we was already here. And we were still, depending on historians, we would still be believing, even though we ain't seen no damn ships, that we just came from Africa 400 years ago. But based on her research, she showed that we are descended from the Olmecs, descended from the Fossums, descended from the Washita, descended from the Twa people, all who was here hundreds and thousands and millions of years ago, right here in the Western Hemisphere. So why you have to pay attention to her particularly, and plus she showed and proved that not only was she just a woman in which that you need to recognize as a goddess, but she also was an empress because she was from the bloodline, showing, how, this bloodline of the heirs of Turner or Turnica actually was able to reclaim 68,883 acres of land. And actually how over 30 million acres of land was not even part of the United States. And that the United States is merely a corporation operating in America. So that's why it's called the United States of America. America is not of the United States. That means America has a superior position. So whenever you go and do your research and find out what America means, you will see that it says in Webster Dictionary, Universal Dictionary, 1936 and 1937 in particular, it states that the original, that the word America applied originally to the copper-colored natives who was here prior to the European invasion of their territory. All right? So they said a copper-colored native. Now, you can take a penny, and we have several shades of penny, but when you put them on the skin of each and every one of us, we all come to that copper-colored color, as being native people here in this Western Hemisphere. So the copper-colored natives was talking about the Aborigines, and that's what it says in the definition. That the original application of the word was to the copper-colored natives, the Aboriginals, or the Aborigines of North America. So that's in the 1936 edition. So when you start looking up these definitions, we are the only Americans. No one else are the Americans on this land. We have superior claim and lien on this property, you know what I'm saying, on this territory, or this land. And matter of fact, this is why when you look up the definition of land in Black's Law Dictionary, the word Moors is embedded inside of the definition. The word Moors and land are synonymous.
Right.
So this is why it's imperative for us to take back the term Moors, because it instantly links us back to land, unlike the word black, Negro, or colored. So that is the way in which that when you do your research, you'll find these particular connections. You know what I'm saying? And, I'm one of the few, who have, done the research, to this magnitude, but that's because I had great teachers, as well as also Brother Hakeem Bey, who came, teaching this information 20 years ago, who actually influenced Bobby on the information about the Moors, and while Bobby still talks about the Moors to this very day, because he was taking classes, in which the Hakeem Bey was teaching also. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And even though Bobby was teaching during the same time as Hakeem Bey, but Bobby was getting the information about the Moorish information from Hakeem. And so he's basically utilized it and been utilizing it ever since. So this is miraculous how this is happening now, and it's like the same thing is happening with Brother Panic and myself. So this is some ironic stuff, because this is exactly 20 years from that time period, 1994.
Interesting. You are absolutely right. Absolutely right. This is some miraculous shit. This is some the new Melchizedek order going down right before your face is on Blog Talk. In your book, you talk about there are actually some pyramids in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
And so, which means we had to be here before. You know what I mean? And you said their cover story is they name it the Pyramid of Isis, the Pyramid, I think you said Set, Sobek, or either Anubis. And then people ask, well, why did they name them that? You know what I'm saying? Well, the miners just really like Egypt, so that's why they named them that. You know what I'm saying? So now you have this in your book. So now, just the mere fact that exists in the Grand Canyon speaks to why we are here. And also when you speak a little bit more, because you gave you listed the order, because most people think Native Americans or what they call them the red Indians that we seen on TV on F Troop and all of that kind of shit. But contrary to it, in your book, you give how those people even came about, that they came out of us, that the original Native Americans were darker people. The original tribes that bore these names were darker people. You even show pictures in Africa with feathers and all of that stuff. We characterize the Native Americans that we've seen on TV. You show them pictures in Africa with tribes dressed up like those characterizations we see on Gilligan's Island and all that kind of shit. So could you speak on that little science?
Right, there's a book that came out by George Gatlin, 1841. It was called Books, Letters, and Notes on the North American Indigenous People of America. And this is what this passage says. Check this out. It says, all primitive tribes known in America are dark, copper-colored, with jet black hair, while most possess curls in the extreme and even levels of wavy hair in between. The texture of the hair is generally fine, soft, or silk, or coarse, or harsh. The hair of the men falling down to their hams, which means to their buttocks, and sometimes to the ground, is divided into plaits or slabs 2 inches wide and filled with protrusions of glue and earth, which became very hard and remained unchanged for years to years. Today, this form of hair, of course, we can call them locks.
Right. Hands down. So, that's as powerful as his feet was a furnace and his eyes were red and his hair was woolly. That's just as big as that. That's just as big as that. Wow. What book is that again, Brother Alim?
That's called the books, the letters, and the notes of North American people of the people of North America by George Gatlin. That's Katlin Gatlin of 1841.
So they now, because we hear this cover story that, oh, now this makes fucking sense, when they always been telling you, well, some of these slaves ran off and joined these Native American tribes.
Right.
You'll see these black Native American motherfuckers all the time. But then but the cover, now it makes sense now. The cover story was always, well, some slaves went and got down with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
After the fact. But basically, that was the Native American. That was the Native American. Shit makes so much sense now. See,
and let me tell you, this is what happened when I was in college. I had a professor by the name of Professor Stokes, who was my sociologist professor. He played a CD for us back from 1904, the damn turn of the century, of the 20th century, and on there you had sociologists debating on what they were going to classify the Chinese. Guess what classification they gave them? Native American. Indian.
Native American.
So the Indians in which you see are nothing but Chinese. That is the so-called red Indian, with a little bit of amalgamation, you know what I'm saying, with the so-called darker Native Americans.
Right.
So
okay.
Right. So from the so-called black merger and the yellow merger is what you get the red and the brown, in which that comes later on. But that is what they're actually talking about, from the amalgamation of Chinese, because they didn't know how to classify the Chinese, so they turned the Chinese into Indians at the turn of the century of the 20th century. And this is from sociology.
Okay. Damn. I'm glad I'm in the order of Melchizedek, because you learn a lot of shit. You learn a lot of shit. Now, you also talk about in your book, you go into plenty of detail, and this seems to be very important, very pivotal, the Empress. And she talks about Louisiana, and she talks about the Louisiana Purchase. And you go into detail about it. So could you shed some light on the Louisiana Purchase? And she just won a lawsuit, something to do with Louisiana as well. Could you break some of that information down?
Right. As being the heir from the heirs of Turner, or Turnica, back from the 1800s, is around the same. Matter of fact, the 1848. It's funny how these so-called black people was able to claim land back in 1848 during the time of slavery, but yet 12 years, well, not even 12 years, 8 years later, by 1856 and 1857, you had Dred Scott versus Sanford, in which that Dred Scott, being that he did not and was not able to tie himself back to land here because of his ignorance, he, Judge Taney, who ruled for the land rights of the Turner family back in 1848, and said that the land belonged to them, the United States, so therefore the United States lost that case based on Judge Taney. Here go the same judge 9 years later, with the Dred Scott versus Sanford, said that there's nothing that a black man and he said Negro, there's nothing that a Negro has that a white man is bound to respect. And that Negroes and those of African descent are not United States citizens, nor will they ever be. Now, this is coming from the same man who judged just 9 years earlier that these so-called Native Americans, who was, i.e., the same people that I just finished mentioning here in that definition, or in the book passage by George Gatlin, about, them looking just like us. So the Africans and us look alike. But here it is, for those in which they're claiming, which was only the 15%, they're saying that they're not U.S. citizens, nor will they ever be. But since they have collectively put all of us in that category, then that's beautiful for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to be a United States citizen in that regard.
Right.
Because I understand the definition of the word American. And the United States, once again, is of America. so the Empress understood that very, she understood that. And so as being Washita, she went before the United Nations back in 1993 and got the seat number 215 as part of the Indigenous Peoples Project, in which that was part of the, in which that later on we find the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, 14 years later, being passed, so she understood that, and so she positioned herself, as being part there at the Social and Economic Council at the United Nations, so that when time was right, would be able to go at an international level instead of battling these things, which is from a human rights standpoint, instead of battling these things from a civil rights standpoint. Even
she got it from a legal standpoint.
Right, Malcolm X said that in order to be recognized as a human being, you must have human rights. Civil rights will come after you're recognized as a human being. But as long as you are chasing civil rights without being recognized as a human being, it's for naught.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Martin Luther King realized the same thing. He said that we're moving out the territory of constitutional rights and we're moving into the area of human rights. So everybody started that human rights as the way in which that we was going. But guess what? They never got a chance to work on their system of solution for that. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they both got assassinated at the age of 39, which was the year right before of spiritual maturity, which is the age of 40.
40, right? Got you. Which is where they were going.
They wouldn't have thought of her, coming along and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, which was the solution in which that both Malcolm and Martin thought about. But she came along and put that into the process for us. So, and already took our stance to an international body, so that the at an international level, that's where we will have to play at, because the majority of the world are people of color, as we would say. And I hate to use that term, but we have this particular way.
So now that means we put it in the context.
Right, put it in that context. So now we have more people to throw on our side instead of just appealing to just the European here in America. Now we have the Australian, the Aborigine people. We have the African. We have Native American. We have Indians. From out of India. We have you know what I'm saying. Now we have a larger population now to say, look, these are the injustices in which that the United States have done against the American people, i.e., the real
worldwide injustices instead of some internal under the carpet bullshit.
Exactly.
Turn the light on. Turn the light on the world stage.
Right, on the world, and then also able to say, well, look, we are Washita and we have land rights. Here it is, 68,883 acres, and we're going for 30 million more acres of land, in which that would verify who we actually are at the international level as being the original owners of this land. Hence the term American as compared to U.S. citizens, which we don't state that we are, because we can never, because just like Judge Taney ruled, we can never be.
Exactly.
Right. Gotcha.
So the Empress understood that. So this is why, it's imperative for us to study her works and get the book, The Return of the Ancient Ones, which you can get, and also you can probably download from online, as well as also the First World Order.
Right. First World Order, excellent, too. Your book does a lot. And I'm sure her book is genius. You know what I'm saying? There's not to take away nothing from what she's done, but I like what you've done because I could, I hear the update in it, if you will. You know what I mean? I hear the update, so it goes a long way. But like I said, don't let that stop you from getting anything she's done, because I can say this, because what I do is make contact. So after she made the transition, I clearly made contact, and she was very eager to speak. Two things. She told me some messages, personal messages for Alim, which when Alim was here at the house, I relayed to him. And if he shares, that's on him. That's between Alim and her, really. But what she did tell me and show me that she was anointing a lot of black gods who didn't get credit, if you will, who made the transition, and they are actually basically getting on their throne. It's a good day. It's a good time. So it does even make sense that another one of Alim's teachers, Master Sunyata, who we had a discussion about as well at my house, made the transition around this time period, because what's going on is very powerful. A lot of gods and a lot of energy on that side is being raised up. Now, one of the things she led me to, which you guys can watch too, it's on Netflix, is a story called Booker's Place, a Mississippi story. And basically, it's this white dude did a documentary in Mississippi, in racist Mississippi in 1965. When I tell you the footage from there is so racist, I've never seen. You haven't even experienced shit like that. And because you have seen when people get hit with sticks and get kicked in the ass, well, that day-to-day conversation, you see subtle conversation that's shocking. And within this, there was a dude named Booker. And this dude Booker worked as a waiter, but also had his own business. And so he worked during the day and had his own joint that was popping at night. And when they got to his documentary, all he did, which is mild by today's standards, was just talk about the behavior of white people. And which in this day was so fucking heroic. Long story short, and I won't give a bunch away, they eventually killed him for this. They eventually destroyed his business. That's obvious. And killed him for it. And even the guy filming the documentary told you, you can get killed for saying this. And he said subtle things. He only said how white people treat him when he comes into things. And he didn't even get ill. He said, like, they just act like this. If I don't do that, they show me an attitude. And this heroic gesture back then, and you'll see for it in this documentary, it's called Booker's Place, a Mississippi Story. You'll see this unsung hero, this hero in this time, which had to be so much courage. You see his daughters talking, and they said they didn't realize. They thought he was stupid, but they realized it was an act of courage, and he knew exactly what he was doing in this time. And he said he was doing this for black people. She basically anointed this dude. You never hear about this dude's story anywhere, but she basically anointed this dude and brought him to the God level. And so she's doing a lot of things like that. So if you were to get with the Empress, Alim, say her full name.
Right, her name is Vidyasi Thierry Washington, which is the word Washington, Turnica, right, which is the word Gaston El Bay.
Okay. Get with her, and what she's doing is bringing people up to a royal level. So if in your spirituality, if you feel you need to go to the next level, you have to be pure of heart. Call on her. She can help you get to another level, a next level in your spiritual understanding of your spiritual light. This shit is all about light. And light is what your actual crown is. Your crown is mimicking the sun, which is the face of God or the face of light. So in this, you're seeking light. And what she's doing right now is crowning people with light. Now, I'm sure y'all can understand this concept. So now that she's crowning people with light and you are light seekers, you want to try to go get a royal anointing from her. So call on her by her name. This is what's happening now. I'm going to contact Sunyata and see what he got going on, and you'll get updates on that. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, the name of this thing on Netflix is Booker's Place, a Mississippi Story. You can see this particular god. All right, so I just wanted to get that out the way in the show. And I guess now moving a little bit forward, Alim, in America, I want to talk about real quick before time runs out, the impact of Jeff Fort and the El Rookins and how they, from Chicago, and how they factor into the Moors. Because I seen a show on them in the 60s where they were, well, at least in the it has them strong arming and creating businesses and doing a lot of things that the Black Islamic movement was doing, but it seemed to be cut short before the Moors were contenders, I guess you would say, as Islam was. So Jeff Fort and the El Rookins, how do they factor in, or what big impact did they have, if any?
Right. Well, the word El Rookin means the soul. El means, the or the definite article or God. You know what I'm saying, within the Hebrew. And Rookin means soul. So El Rookin means God's soul. So, of course, we being soul people, us coming up, like you said, from the 60s, listening to James Brown, you know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
We got soul, you know what I'm saying? So here it is.
I know you got soul.
That being the catalyst, you know what I'm saying? And plus, you had during the 60s, a lot of the movements in which that we had, which was actually from the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers had food operations and programs, and so the El Rookins began utilizing that information during that time period too. Just like the Zulu Nation did, with the Black Spades in New York. You know what I'm saying? The late 60s, 70s. You know what I'm saying? With African Bambaataa. You know what I'm saying? All of that. You know what I'm saying, was going on during that time period. And, of course, as usual, everybody is labeled a gang, just like the 5% of the nation that nerve is labeled down in prison.
A gang. Right, so, and Black Panthers were labeled a gang, right.
Right, all this nonsense. European always trying to define who the fuck we are. And that's one of the things in which I really don't like. You know what I'm saying? So here it is, the El Rookins, they took information coming from that period with the Moral Science Temple of America and was moving towards that. That's why a lot of the information connecting with the Moral Science Temple is because Jeff Fort, as well as others during that time period, was bridging the gap, you know what I'm saying, and not just bringing young people to their so-called game, but they were actually teaching them and educating them on these particular sciences coming from what referred to as the Temple, the Nation of Islam, as well as also the information that was in the streets, which is the 5%ers.
Got you. So basically, the same program or the same tactic that they used against the Black Panthers, 5% Nation, the Gods and Earth, that once we come together with any force, they just classify us as a gang or a grouping of people that's self-destructive when they're building. So it's just easy for people to accept. Makes sense. Okay, let me see. Makes sense. So, all right, because I know Jeff Fort has a lot of power.
Right.
A lot of respect within it as well. Okay, I've heard this brought up a lot, and people have explained it. So I'll get the most explanation from it, but I've heard you explain it in lectures. So the concept of the straw man.
Right.
And how does it fit into the Wizard of Oz straw man? I've seen people connected to that movie. So how does it fit in there?
Right. Well, when you read the Black's Law Dictionary, particularly the 4th Deluxe edition, you will find homeostramios or Ostromios homo. Ostromios homo means straw man. Our definition is a Latin term. But when you look at the definition, it says a man of no substance. Hence, an artificial, which is the same as an artificial person or a corporation in definition. Now, we connect that because the scarecrow or the straw man is the first individual in which Dorothy meets on the yellow brick road. The word yellow brick road symbolizes gold, and then it's leading you towards the Emerald City, which is where the emerald symbolizes the greenbacks, which is the fiat notes or the money or FRNs on which that is being made. And I really hate to use the word money because actually being that it don't have any substance backing it, which is gold and silver or something of substance, it is actually the straw man or the artificial person. The second person that meets on the yellow brick road is the Tin Man, which is symbolic to taxpayer identification number, which is TIN, Tin Man. So the straw man symbolizes your birth certificate, and the Tin Man symbolizes your Social Security card, the two things in which that was issued by the Federal Reserve Bank during the time of Prophet Noble Ali and Marcus Garvey, 1913, 1914.
Damn. So prior to that, there was no Social Security or birth certificates?
Right. There was no, because the Federal Reserve Bank was just being formed during that time period, and they issued forth the IRS, which is the daughter of the Federal Reserve Bank, as well as also, the other subsidiary organizations under it in order to issue forth what we call the birth certificate. And a little bit later on, I think it was by 1927, we find the Social Security card coming into play. So, of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1914 going to 1914, 1913 going to 1914, you have certain individuals. You had the Rockefellers by the behest of the Rothschilds, who were putting together this along with J.P. Morgan, along with other bankers and financiers who you get the book called The Creature Off of Jekyll Island. Get that book, and it goes into the establishment of the so-called Federal Reserve Bank, in which that you would see exactly what we're talking about and how at that time the centralized bank took over the monetary system. And so by 1933, after the design of the Social Security card, and after them bringing in the so-called birth certificate, by 1933, the gold standard is no longer being utilized and is no longer backed to fiat money. And then by 1972, going to 73, Richard Nixon takes the rest of the money off the silver standard. So now no longer is gold nor silver back in the monies. And so actually just for the last 40, damn near 40, some odd years, money had nothing backing it. You know what I'm saying? And this type of system can only last approximately 70 years. So we're looking at it's going to have to change within the next 10, 20, 30 years if they want to continue, with society. They're going to have to change it to something else. And so now we find them doing what is called the North American Union, in which that Canada, the United States, Mexico are supposedly coming together to create what is called the Emerald dollar, in which that pushed some in 5. But right now, they haven't been able to, usher it forward because Mexico is still having problems with it because they don't want to replace their pesos right now.
Okay. So now, what would initiate them? Is it just they were going broke in the first place for going to this system? If they were using gold, what would initiate them?
Right. Actually, by the United States been bankrupt since 1891, officially. Right after the the so-called Civil War, and bankrupt. So. And then with the release of the so-called slaves from out of slavery, they have a commodity in order to utilize for free. So this is why by the early 1900s they had to come up with another system in which that we're not using their physical bodies any longer. Let's use their names, which is called the Ethernet pronoun, which means it sounds the same. In which that now they take the name in all caps. And yet the only place in which that you see an all-cap name is actually on the tombstone. So they made the civil list more
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Right. They made the civil list more civics, and so took that name in all caps and said, okay, well, this is your name, and now if you don't abide by what we state, any code, rules, statutes, ordinances, or whatever else, then you have to pay with your physical body. Hence, it's called estro, which is jail or prison, and that's what is going on. So now they figured out that the largest thing that you can do is the prison system. So now you have more, brothers and sisters in prison, you know what I'm saying, than you did during the time of slavery.
Okay, so this is just really about eating off it. So how do they make money, let's just say, off your birth certificate and your Social Security? What's the hustle?
Off of your signature, your name. So when your mother, with the informant, signs you over to the hospital, they flip that to the Register of Deeds, and which that flip that to the DTC, which is Depository Trust Company, and then flip that to the Foreign Stock Exchange and the NYSE, which is the New York Stock Exchange, and they put your birth certificate with your name in all caps on the open market to be sold, or to be sold by various corporations in which that purchase your bond, which is your birth certificate, and which is now worth, upon maturity from the age of 18, and the time that they force males, in particular, to have to sign up for selective services, or you get your voting rights or privileges, you know what I'm saying, for men and women, all of a sudden that matures now from $650,000 or $1.6 million to now hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow, just one birth certificate.
Just one birth certificate. And so corporations purchase those particular birth certificates through what's called mutual funds and bundle bonds, as they call it.
And so that's the value on the stock exchange?
Yeah, if you go to Fidelity, you would put in your state, you can put in your bond number on your birth certificate, which is in red, or your state file number on your birth certificate, or either your Social Security card on the front, or either the password, which is the prepaid levy bond number on the back. You can actually see what company owns your birth certificate and how much you are actually worth.
Damn. So, I know you guys more. There's more information on how to get some of that money or all of that money. Or is there a system where you could tap into that? Because I know that's what people are doing. And I want to point this out. I don't want people to get caught up, because what I hear is a lot of people caught up in greed.
Right.
So I'm not saying to get caught up in the greedy aspect of it. But I think when I asked you this question at my house, the best answer you said, well, get what you can get. Don't, because I was like, well, it don't seem like you could do this. And then, with my question, you was like, well, it's about if you notice and if you could score with it, then score with it. But dedicating your life to this and not finding your light seems like an issue to me. So
exactly.
Just for the sake of if there's a way for you to get it where it doesn't impede on your spiritual alchemy or your spiritual growth or your spiritual prosperity, what are some of the things you can do
to
tap into maybe some of that physical cash?
Right. Well, number one, we have to learn the Fibonacci numbers, because that's what the Jews are using, or the numbers from the Fibonacci. So if you understand what the Fibonacci numbers are, then you would go and find those particular forms in which that correlates to that particular pattern. That would give you the clue on how to get out, of what they have us under. Now, you would use a bond for discharge affidavit along with some other, with a uniform commercial code financing statement, or called UCC, in which that, what you do to UCC, you capture the straw man. So the debtor would be the straw man, which is the name of all caps, and then you turn the straw man over to the secure party creditor, which is your name in up and lowercase, but it's not the same name. You don't want to do that, because you can't be the creditor and the credit, or what is called the grantor and the grantee at the same time. You have to make abbreviation. You have to make it appear to be different. So your name is all caps. So let's say your name is Samuel Jackson in all caps, but your in this appellation or free national name is Sabu Bay.
Right.
Okay. So now that looks different. You know what I'm saying? So now the commercial creditor is Sabu Bay. You know what I'm saying? But guess what? Sabu Bay don't have a birth certificate attached, to Sabu Bay. But Samuel Jackson do. So what you're doing is transferring all the assets and all the property from Samuel Jackson to Sabu Bay, who does not have a birth certificate. So therefore, he's not in bondage, because the word bondage, the word bond, and age. So remember, we talked about at the age of 18 where it matures. So now, right, at 18, you really go into bondage. That bond is now aged. You know what I'm saying? So now you are in bondage at the age of 18, in which that is transferred from just being from the IRC, which is the Internal Revenue Codes, from being $650,000 to $1.6 million in value, now being hundreds of millions of dollars, and now, that is on the open market, it's sold. And so you, as Sambo Bay, you have an interest in that because they use your property without telling you such. But since you don't have a birth attached to Sambo Bay, then guess what? You don't reap the repercussions of Samuel Jackson, But Samuel Jackson just turned everything over to Sambo Bay. So now Sambo Bay acts on behalf of Samuel Jackson in order to discharge debt.
Okay, let me ask this, because I don't want this show to end without you getting this out. And I want to continue along this line. Do you help people with this process?
Yes, we have been doing this for 12 years. And for people who, we heard the Moors go to jail for this. Well, nigga, I ain't in jail. I'm on this damn radio show trying to enlighten you.
Right.
Enlighten your ass. Got you. So you can't just get with any old body. So my suggestion, and after someone who's been doing it for 12 years, and as he pointed out, ain't in jail, Alim may be a good way to go if you want to investigate this more. So just contact you at the website, dralimlbay.com. So I want to get that out as we continue along this, because you can hear Alim.
We had a witness right here, Brother Fahim. You want to tell him, because you done the process with this. I believe you out of jail, ain't you?
I'm out of jail.
Where you at, brother? You on the radio show with me, ain't you?
On the radio show.
Okay.
You're not calling us from Rikers Island.
No.
Right. You ain't calling Rikers
on. So, sir.
Right.
Okay.
So excellent. So Alim helps with this process for anybody who's interested in it. Just so you know, contact Brother Dr. Alim at dralimlbay.com. So I want to get that in this particular show, so people will know as we continue on. So now you're saying you insure at age 18, and is that based upon, because basically 18 is working age. So is that the concept that you're able to work now, so you're more valuable?
Right, you're more valuable because now they recommend that between the age of 18 to the age of 65, during that working time, that you will make in essence at least $1 million or more. So therefore, what the bank does is fractionalize banking. So they, they use division of 10. So it's 10 times the value of now. So, like for example, if you put $1 in there, what the bank does is fractionalize banking, in which that they'll take that dollar and use that dollar 10 different ways. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
They just give you that dollar, or matter of fact, they don't even give you the dollar no more. They'll charge you, you know what I'm saying, yearly.
Right. Interest, right. Just having it in that motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But basically, that $1 is a $10 credit for them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's fractionalized banking. Whereas that same dollar ain't there, which is yours, that damn thing, that dollar now becomes, someone else's, 10 different times.
Okay. So what's now, I've heard white people as well doing this UCC thing.
Right, but remember, the difference is that BEY does not have a birth certificate. When white people do it, called the so-called title sovereigns, because that's actually all they can be is title sovereigns, because they're not originally from this landmass.
Right, gotcha.
They take us back to Europe and claim sovereignty over there, but they can't do that here.
Gotcha.
So what goes on is that what they do is simply the name in which that is all caps. What they do in the debtors box, what they do in the secure creditors box, they make that same name upper and lowercase. So Samuel Jackson in uppercase is still Samuel Jackson in upper and lowercase.
In lowercase. So basically that's
right.
the distinction.
So that means they have not made a distinction between creditor and credit,
right,
or what we call grantor and grantee. They have not made a difference. They have not made a change as far as that is concerned. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
they're basically saying they're the same person. They're just not agreeing.
You have a birth certificate attached because the name is still Samuel Jackson. Edom Sonum, which means it still sounds the same to me, Nicky.
Right. Interesting. So now, what's the worst case scenario? Because what I've heard is that some people have lost. Because you still need every job you get, you need a birth certificate, every job or a social security card. So when they go through this process, I've heard stories of people having some grief with jobs and in their house in certain situations. What did they do wrong? If they did something wrong, or what's the worst thing that can happen by dealing with this?
Right. Well, the worst thing is getting your ass in jail. That would be the worst thing.
Right.
But, okay. Either the FBI taking your ass out. That would be the worst thing. But realistically, what must be done is the people must make a distinction, like I just spoke about.
Right.
And then the information must be sent and put on notice at the United States Secretary of Treasury. All right, that you are promoting Article 110 of the Constitution, in which that now you want gold and silver to be backed by something, and along with the information that you send to the Secretary of Treasury, which is the UCC 1 financial statement, UCC 1 affidavit, the security agreement. You keep the private agreement, and if you want, you can also keep the security agreement, but also the whole harmless indemnity clause with a collateral listing. You also send the bond for discharge. You send a negotiable charge back, a negotiable bill of exchange, as well as also a private bond set-off, along with a silver bond certificate, in which that shows you have at least 22 pieces of silver. So you would send a picture along with your silver bond certificate, in which that you would send all of this to the United States Secretary of Treasury, along with various other forms. You know what I'm saying? But when you send this off, it's going to be registered mail. So it would be a registered mail tab that you would send this to a vanilla envelope, and you send this information to Jacob Lew, who's the Secretary of Treasury right now, and you are demanding and commanding him to activate your UCC trust account, in which that gives you access to being able to discharge your debts within 30 days. So then you'll be able to the routing number of these Federal Reserve banks, whichever bank in which that you are attached to. Like I stated in the lecture, you have 12 Federal Reserve banks. If it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, they are all attached to a certain city. All right? Like, for example, E is Richmond, Virginia, and attached also to some banks in Charlotte, North Carolina. F is Atlanta, Georgia, and so forth and so on. So once you have the routing number to these particular banks, you're able to actually do your own money orders or bill of exchanges, in which that gives you access to being able to discharge your debts. So, like, for example, if you have student loans, if you have a car note, a mortgage, you can actually discharge your debt. We help a brother and a sister from out of Chicago a few years ago to clear their mortgage, which was $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, it works. We've done it. You know, and guess what? No one went to jail doing it. Nobody went to jail doing it. So,
well, see, if I was ever to go down that route, you would be the one I'm fucking with.
Matter of fact, when they went to court,
just on the information level, I wouldn't be comfortable with fucking with a lot of motherfuckers on that level. Like, you know, just on the information level and the longevity of doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So. Mm-hmm.
Well,
were you going to say something?
I was saying that, as a matter of fact, the couple is still in their house to this very day. And when they went to court, because they was calling us all hysterical, thinking that, you know, that they did something wrong, and we told them, say, no, go to court. And so when they went to court, and just from them being in court, when the judge called their names, they stood up, and immediately the judge hit the gavel and gave them their deed to their house.
Mm.
So this is
wow.
real. How real is it going to? You know what I'm saying? How real is it going to get if people, you know, of course, someone's only thing they doing is trying to get money. You know what I'm saying? I know people who's charging $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $15,000 and more. You know what I'm saying? Do the same thing that we did for $300.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
wow.
saying? So they trying to get rich. You know, off of this thing. You know what I'm saying? And ripping off the people. Hell, the $300 was just for me to have to do the paperwork, to do the seals, to do, you know, all of that. You know what I'm saying? Hell, I got to buy that shit from damn Office Max or Staples. But we still don't have none of that yet. We still ain't got that shit yet. You know what I'm saying? So I still got to get the equipment in order to help you get as free as possible. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to be free as possible. You know what I'm saying? Hell, I got a house now, you know what I'm saying, that's 3 bedrooms, you know what I'm saying? We got about 9 rooms up in there, and we got 3 acres of land. And we got that for $900.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And that was paying off the back taxes for abandoned property. You know what I'm saying? And then what we did, we put it in a ministry. Then we was able to go to the tax administration and get a exemption form for being a ministry. So now we was able to put the land and the house under that particular ministry, and therefore, when we went to the register of deeds, everything was done, which was the quiet claim deed and or either a warranty deed. Everything was put under that ministry. So now, guess what? When the county writes us and states that we owe taxes on the land or we owe taxes on the house, we're tax exempt. We don't owe you shit.
Wow.
So I got a house which is clear of a mortgage, no land taxes, no house taxes, and plus my cars are under the ministry, so therefore no car taxes annually. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You pay no taxes as Moors because that's how you do it. But as long as Negroes are following these jarhead cats that can't demonstrate and show them what they're doing and what they actually have, you know what I'm saying? Hell, I can tell you, I can show people. Hell, we done invited people down to our land, you know what I'm saying, back during my birthday, April 19th, and also during March 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and get ready to do it again for the initiations into the Order of Melchizedek, June 28th and 29th. You know what I'm saying? When people get to see what we did and what we was able to do just by paying the rears on the taxes, which was $900 and 3 acres of land and a house, and now all tax exempt. So we don't pay no taxes, no mortgage, nothing. Only thing we pay is electricity. We don't even have a water bill.
Check that out.
So when taxes start demonstrating like that, then come to me. But as long as they out there just off people, you know what I'm saying? That's the problem. And that's why the Moors have a bad name. And I don't really, and sometimes I don't even feel I don't want to be affiliated with their asses. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Nigga, don't call me more
Right.
shit. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So I'm just simply Dr. Alim. Don't even throw the BEY or the L, or don't throw none of that shit on it.
Right.
Right.
Or you're giving such a bad name until it's just ridiculous, yo. It's really crazy.
It is, yeah.
Right. Because, like I said, a lot of what you just cleared up to me for tonight really had a bad name on it. You know what I mean? That's really what it was something about. It just really has a bad name on it. You know what I'm saying? It's to the point where when you hear the dialogue, and it's not just me, it's like you just don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's explaining it. Nobody's putting it in no real context. It's showing where it fits into a grand scheme of moving forward. You know what I mean? And like, I've heard a lot tonight that broke a lot down for me. Actually, I started hearing it in your book, really. You know what I'm saying? Where it inspired me to say we should do a show on it. You know what I mean? But, yeah, that's exactly it. I can see why you wouldn't want to be affiliated, because a lot of dudes is really joking with this, because it seems like it's come down to a argument. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
that's what it comes down
you'll ask about the information, and then you'll hear the reply as if they're still trying to convince you of an argument or a point. You know what I mean? It's like, but no, I'm really just asking about some real proactive shit, and you telling me about some shit that somebody else talked about from before that offended you.
Well, give me a theory.
Yeah,
give me what you experienced, what you did with it. And that's
right,
and
exactly.
that's what my wife and I can do. We can tell you what we did with it. This is what we did.
Right.
This is how we did it.
Right.
You know, that comes from court cases, because we won nearly all our court cases. And that's without driver's license, without insurance, without registration, as well as also without license. We've done it.
Right.
We wrote on our plates for years, and everybody can verify that we wrote on our own plates for years. You know what I'm saying? And plus won nearly all our court cases. So this is somebody who has done all of this, who did this Morris thing to the hilt.
Exactly.
Now, ain't no theory.
Right, yeah, right, because that's exactly what I was going to say next. What I usually get is like, it sounds like people are talking about theories, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's one of my biggest things, that I stay away from theories. Everything I've ever talked about is shit I've tapped into, that I don't have to sit around and say, you know, here's a theory about DMT. Let me tell you what happened when I tapped into it. You know what I'm saying? Let me tell you what happened when I tapped into Kundalini. You know, let me tell you what you feeling based upon what I felt when I was doing that, or when it happened to me, and you know, how it turned out. So I'm big, and that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy doing shows with you and can build with you on this level, because I don't really hear theories from you. You know what I'm saying? I hear somebody who actualized it. And that's one of the biggest things, I think, not just some of the new Moors, but a lot of people are suffering from these theories. You know what I mean? Now, I see little things, and like now that we have the social network of Facebook, where I get to monitor and see what really people are really learning. You know, I hear somebody will say, how do you offer a sacrifice to the ancestors? But even more than that question, which they should be able to find out by now, I won't blame them because we don't know how new they are. I really blame the people who come back trying to answer them. And then you hear how stuck they are.
Right,
you know
and
what I mean?
The thing is that people, this is what gets me, God, is that people know that I've been doing this for years. I got books, I got DVDs, I got radio show,
right.
I got all these things, all right? But it still go to somebody, you know what I'm saying, who can't prove anything that they've done.
Anything. Right. Oh, goodness, exactly. That's what I know, and that's exactly, very good point. I've noticed that as well. Like, it's like I'll see them go, you know, I always try to tell you the book and what happened when you do this. And then I try to give you a whole load of things that you can try on yourself, and then challenge you to tell me the results. Like, well, do that, and then see where you get. Do that, as opposed to saying, well, if you do that, you know, I heard that this happened. No, you never hear that come out. So I'm like, why have people even asking and putting that out, or even doing that? And there's plenty of documented, as you said, I have documented stories I got lectures on how to set up an altar and contact your ancestors. So I'm like, why would you even have to. You shouldn't even at this point with YouTube